Good morning.
Morning.
I'm State Senator Brian Kavanaugh, welcoming you to this hearing of the Committee on Housing, Construction, and Community Development on deed theft. I'm very happy to welcome all of you. It's great to see a large crowd in person here, and I think this is also the inaugural voyage of this new refurbished Senate hearing room. So we're happy to be here and also, kick the tires on the new technology. So hopefully everything will work smoothly. We are going to be joined today. First of all, I should note I'm joined by Senator Myrie of Brooklyn, who has been a real leader in this issue and also in preparation for this hearing. We'll hear from him shortly. We also expect it is a busy day, but we're expected to be joined by several other senators who are members of the Housing Committee today. We are going to hear testimony from individuals and their representatives who have been impacted by deed theft, and also various public agencies and legal service providers who are involved in trying to address the problem. This is not a new problem. We've seen deed theft in various forms over many years. We note that as early as 2006, the state legislature took action by passing the Home Equity Theft Prevention Act. That was a bill that was intended to protect homeowners in default on their mortgages and in foreclosure from fraud and deception and unfair dealing by home equity purchasers. In 2019, we enacted legislation called the 2019 Deed Theft Law, and this is a bill that dealt with the work of distressed property consultants. And in 2021, in response to continued aggressive practices related to the solicitation of buying and selling of properties in certain Brooklyn neighborhoods, we enacted Chapter 581 of the laws of 2021, authorizing the Secretary of State to establish cease and desist zones that would prohibit solicitations, unsolicited offers to purchase property. The Department of State has held hearings on this year, and as a result of the law, and we expect a report to be forthcoming from the Secretary of State's office. While it is our perception that some of these laws have helped, we also recognize that this continues to be a very grave problem, and we hope to illustrate that for people present and for the general public and the media today. And we hope to engage in the important question of how to find solutions to this problem that will both bring justice to people who are engaging in these pernicious practices, but also to the people who have lost title to their own property as a result. So I'm not going to go much further because we're getting started a little late and we have our witnesses ready to go. But I would first acknowledge we've been joined by Senator Brisport. Before we hear from the first witnesses, to see if Senator Myrie has any opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Let me also thank the staff that helped put this together, and shout out the IT folks who were making us sound and look good. We're very grateful for that. I want to share very briefly a testimony that I received from one of my constituents who asked that I not reveal their name because they are living in fear every single day. We sent out a notice of this hearing, a letter, and our phones have been off the hook in my office. The emails have been coming in a constant stream, and one of them was so striking to me and so illustrative of what the problem is, I thought that I'd share it with everyone. And this individual fell on hard times like many homeowners, went to someone to help them with their mortgage like many homeowners, someone who had represented themselves as a source of help for them, but who ended up stealing everything that they had. This individual, when they told their family what had happened, their brother died of a heart attack right in front of them. And this individual still has an open case, still does not have justice, still lives in fear every single day that someone is going to come and take their home. So I just want to preview the energy that I'm going to bring to this hearing, because not only have these thieves stolen our homes, not only have they stolen our equity, they have stolen our lives. And no component in our government system should allow for this. And it is why I am very grateful to the government entities that have showed up today, that accepted our invitation. But it is also why I'm extremely disappointed that the Office of Court Administration and the Kings County Public Administrator's Office refused our invitation to testify at this hearing. The court system can either prevent or facilitate this atrocity. And to me, it remains an open question about what role the court wants to play if they are not going to send representatives to talk to us about this problem. So I'm thankful to the chair for holding this hearing. I look forward to hearing from the impacted individuals, our government entities, and our legal service providers. And again, thank all of you. I know we have a lot of people tuning in at home, so thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Senator Myrie. And Senator Brisbois?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. I'll be brief. Like Senator Myrie, I represent a section of Black Central Brooklyn where this problem is especially pernicious. This is something that affects all of our communities, but especially Black homeowners in Central Brooklyn are harmed by this. I'm incredibly thankful for Senator Kavanaugh for having this hearing, also, again, for our government partners for working with us to build a solution, all the directly impacted individuals who are ready to share your stories today, and also members of the press that are here today to help shine a light on this, because every single one of these stories should be highlighted, and no one should be left to suffer in silence.
Thank you, Senator Brisbois. Okay, so without further ado, we have our first panel. Each witness is going to have 5 minutes to present testimony, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and discussion with the panel. So first up, we have Joan Roth on behalf of Delois Blakely and William Leinhard on behalf of Janet Bruce.
Okay. Should I begin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Well, good morning. My name is Joan Roth, and I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm an international photojournalist. And for the past 50 years, my work has highlighted the plight of homeless population and women around the world. So it's an honor to testify here before this esteemed New York Senate body regarding the epidemic of deed theft that is ravaging thousands of New Yorkers' homeowners and rendering many homeless. I'm especially grateful for the opportunity to testify on behalf of Queen Mother Dr. Dolores Blakely, an 81-year-old former Catholic nun, Nelson Mandela Humanitarian Award recipient, and the current long-serving community mayor of Harlem, New York. Dr. Blakely has earned multiple advanced degrees from prestigious academic institutions such as Columbia University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Harvard University. She was unfortunately unable to testify in person today because of a previous obligation relating to her 53-year tenure as an ECOSAC NGO United Nations leader. Despite her accomplishments, Dr. Blakely, like more than 60,000 other New York homeowners who are mostly elderly and Black, is the unwitting target of a series of complex deed theft and mortgage fraud schemes that are sweeping the city. Residents who have owned homes in New York, some outright without mortgages, for nearly half a century are now losing those properties to foreclosures through no fault of their own. In fact, many had mortgage deeds stolen and their equity stripped. Sophisticated real estate speculators are using advanced technology to conspire and successfully exploit loopholes within the civil courts and criminal justice system in order to take property from and reduce former homeowners to renters or into homelessness. Even though Queen Mother did not have a mortgage, her deed was stolen, and the $5 million worth of equity to which only she should have been entitled was stripped. After recently losing a 15-year battle, which spanned the New York Housing Court, New York Supreme Court, U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of New York, and the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, Dr. Blakely, who represented herself pro se, has been told that she must leave her home. The most thing about her case is that when Dr. Blakely acquired the property that is subject of this testimony nearly 50 years ago, it was abandoned. However, she acquired it, took Housing Development Fund Corporation's management courses at Columbia University, secures $900,000 to make necessary renovations, and establish the building and her personal humanitarian mission. For the past 40-plus years, the HDFC has provided virtual housing to disenfranchised homeless women, many with children and nowhere else to go. Countless women and some men have sought shelter at the property that Dr. Blakely has passionately made available to the homeless and suffering. Nevertheless, a lifelong humanitarian and her severely disabled adult daughter have been served an eviction notice slated to take place December 31st, 2022, with no foreseeable recourse, stemming from the overt and repeated criminal acts of deed theft and mortgage fraud that has somehow gone overlooked, ignored, and which have been permitted to span nearly 2 decades. We got to go fast, right? As you can imagine, it would be rather difficult for me to fully explain the whole intricacies of a complex multi-million-dollar deed theft scheme before this committee. Therefore, I will attempt to clarify 3 critical elements. So in about 2007, 4 conspirators, 2 HDC board members, and 2 convicted felons, one of whom illegally posed as an attorney, together created a fraudulent consent of stockholder document and used it to successfully secure a fraudulent $650,000 mortgage. This was done without full board approval, which is against HDFC statutory regulations. Queen Mother Dr. Blakely had no knowledge of this transaction until the property was driven into foreclosure due to repeated non-payment of the resulting fraudulent mortgage. And in and about June 2011, New York Supreme Court Justice Milton Tingley uncovered a disturbing pattern of fraud relating to the property. He admonished the co-conspirators individually and stated he was going to refer the case to the New York State District Attorney's Office, and further stated that somebody was going to jail. And somebody did, actually. And only a little bit of time. So the Harlem, a group that filed they filed a criminal report on behalf of Queen Mother Blakely with 4 state and federal agencies, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, both the Albany and the New York City offices of the Attorney General of New York and New York District Attorney. However, to our knowledge, neither of the 4 agencies have responded to the criminal report to date. So in conclusion, given the epidemic proportions of deed theft that is occurring in New York, Queen Mother Blakely would like to fight for this legislative body to consider utilizing her case as the poster child to represent the multitude of homeowners who are the victims of deed theft. She wishes to continue to work with this committee she has acted on behalf of humanity for her entire life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Senators, thank you for addressing this important issue. Thank you for allowing me to testify on behalf of Janet Bruce, my client, today. And before I begin, I just want to say to Senator Myrie, right on. I could not agree with you more, and we need to have much more aggressive government enforcement of the laws that exist, in addition to additional legislation. So my name is Bill Lienhard. I'm a founding partner of Lienhard and Grumbach PLLC. We're a law firm dedicated to fighting real estate fraud in Brooklyn and Queens. We should not exist. The government should be taking care of this problem, but we have to exist because the government is not addressing it aggressively enough. I'm going to tell you about the case of Bruce versus Solney. It was covered extensively in a New York Times article this summer. All the facts I'm going to recite are already in our complaint that was filed in the case. But in summary, in 2006, Janet Bruce, a retired home health aide, and her late husband, James, used their life savings to make a down payment on 161 East 29th Street in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. They took out a mortgage and purchased the home for $380,000. It should have been a great investment. East 29th Street down that block is a great block. It's near public transportation. It even has a garage that exits onto a private alleyway. They put a ton of work into the place, and it was mostly Mrs. Bruce's sweat equity. They put in a new kitchen, new plumbing, new electrical. According to Zillow, that property is now worth about $1 million. But that $1 million in equity does not belong to Mrs. Bruce. How did this happen? After making payments for 7 years, they fell behind in their mortgage because, like a lot of these stories, Mr. Bruce had a stroke. A member of the community who was likely working for a group of scammers to help them find and deliver up unsuspecting homeowners, introduced the Bruces, and they introduced them to Sanford Solney. I am going to name names today, by the way. I think that's important. Sanford Solney, and also Sanford Solney's lawyers and associates and corporations. And together I'm just going to call them the Solneys because it is a group of people, but it centers around one person. The Solneys said they wouldn't be able to save the Bruces' home, but that they could at least pay the Bruces a small amount in cash and pay off their mortgage by arranging a short sale. Sanford Solney led the Bruces to believe that he would act as their attorney in the transaction, although, like the person in your case, his law license had actually been suspended in 2012. Thinking that they had no other choice and that they were represented by a lawyer, the Bruces agreed, and the Solneys held a closing on March 9th, 2014 at the house. At the closing, they used high-pressure tactics to get the Bruces to sign stacks of documents without reading them. Included among these was a deed granting title from the Bruces to East 29th Street Realty, a corporation controlled by the Solneys. And also included in that stack of documents was a Home Equity Theft Protection Act waiver that the Bruces unwittingly signed. The Solneys never had any intention of arranging a short sale for the Bruces or helping them out with their mortgage. As soon as this deal was done and the Bruces vacated the house, the Solneys installed tenants and started collecting rent. Meanwhile, a foreclosure case was still pending against the Solneys, against the Bruces. The Solneys actually sent lawyers into court pretending to represent the Bruces in the foreclosure case for the sole purpose of delaying that case as long as possible, not resolving it, so that they could continue to collect rent while the foreclosure case was pending. One of the lawyers who worked on that case never even met Mrs. Bruce. She had no idea who he was. I said, "Have you ever seen this name before?" And she said, "No." This lawyer was going into court and signing documents on her behalf, signing settlements on her behalf without any permission from her. Gives you an idea of the level of fraud involved in this issue. The Solneys were prosecuted successfully in Queens. Sanford Solney is convicted of a Class E felony. They are on probation. They are currently being prosecuted by the Brooklyn District Attorney. And the question I want to end with is, why hasn't Sanford Solney been put in prison for violating his probation? What does a real estate scammer have to do to be imprisoned for real estate fraud in Brooklyn? Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your testimony. I'm just going to begin. You've both laid out, compelling cases for, the horrors of this as people have experienced it. We want to focus today very much on mechanisms that we might either legislate or we might be able to get some of the authorities that we're going to be hearing from. Some of them we're going to be hearing from. Some of them we're going to be discussing their activities today. But I guess particularly, Mr. Leinhart, as an attorney, if you were in a position of the governmental entities in here, are there additional powers that you would like to have available to you that would allow you to kind of alter the course of these transactions, reverse these transactions, go after the culprits?
Absolutely. Number one, I would like to know who is behind all the LLCs that are ripping up real estate in communities of color in Brooklyn. That would be a huge step forward. Criminals, quasi-criminals, real estate developers, lawyers, the whole ecosystem uses LLCs like a shell game. And it makes it very difficult for advocates and lawyers like me to figure out who's actually behind these real estate transactions on purpose. So that would be one of my suggestions. I would also suggest lengthening the statute of limitations. The Solneys and teams of fraudsters like the Solneys They know the statute of limitations law like the back of their hand. And all they're trying to do is they're trying to get that ball down to the end zone and get past, in the case of HETFA, there's a 2-year statute of limitations on voiding transactions. And with fraud, there's a 6-year statute of limitations on cases that can be brought. They're experts at that. I would like to see those statute of limitations lengthened.
Thank you. I think I'll switch. I'll let my colleagues. You good?
Yeah. Well, one, thank you both for your testimony, and I totally agree with you on the LLC secrecy. I believe there's a bill we have not passed yet to shine a light on. Yeah, I think some members Gallagher and Senator Hoyle might have it. I am curious more about the terms of the prosecution with the Brooklyn District Attorney. If you could just share more information about the case. I'm particularly interested in if any demands are being made on the rent that's already been paid to Solney, and what should be done with that money.
So I'm not the person to speak to about this. I mean, the Brooklyn District Attorney can answer these questions better. I can just tell you that I think there are 8 or 9 properties involved, and they were indicted. The Solneys were indicted in Brooklyn in December 2020. The case has been adjourned multiple times. As far as I know, there's no end in sight, and as far as I know, there's no real effort to violate him on his probation.
Thank you.
You good? Okay. Okay. So thank you both for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Just add one thing?
Oh, please.
Oh, thank you. So that in about April in 2022, the Harlem Advocacy Group filed a 150-page criminal report on all that's gone on with Queen Mother and so on to 4 state agencies and federal agencies, and no one has responded. And I think that what's really, really important is that they should be obligated to respond and to look into the case. And because if they did, they could find what's really happened in this, and the case could go on. In fairness, instead of throwing this woman, 81 years old, and her daughter, who's bedridden, on the street. So.
Yeah, I should note that in addition to those testifying today, we also are receiving written testimony from several of our district attorneys' offices, and we will be hearing from some of the agencies you're referring to today. So
That's great.
you can ask. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Megan Fox, who's the Chief Deputy Attorney General for Social Justice, and Gerard Murphy, who's Assistant Attorney General from the Bureau and the Bureau Chief of the Public Integrity Bureau and Real Estate Enforcement Unit. Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee today. Okay. Sure. Is my mic on?
Yeah, you might want to move it.
Okay.
There should be a green light if it's on.
It's green.
Okay, just a little closer probably. Good.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee today. My name is Megan Fox. I'm the Chief Deputy Attorney General for Social Justice at the Office of the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Rod Murphy, the Chief of the AG's Public Integrity Bureau and Real Estate Enforcement Unit, who will also be speaking on our work in this area. We would first like to thank the members of this committee and your colleagues in the legislature for your partnership and support you have provided to the OAG over the past several years. We appreciate our strong working relationship, and we look forward to another productive legislative session. We would also like to thank you, Chair Kavanaugh, and the rest of the committee for convening this deed theft hearing. As you know, preventing deed theft has long been a priority of Attorney General James, going back to her time as a member of the City Council, and she appreciates the collaborative relationship that you all have had. Our office devotes significant resources to addressing deed theft, both from the criminal and the civil side. We hope to use our time today to detail some of our office's work and legislative recommendations that we have about how we can strengthen the state's response to this problem. Deed theft is an especially troubling form of theft because it has consequences far greater than a mere object. It's a loss of a family's home, the deprivation of a person's most significant asset, family's intergenerational wealth, and it causes victims to be displaced from their communities. Since 2019, the Attorney General's office has received several hundred complaints of deed theft. The number is unacceptably high, but would have been even higher had the government not halted foreclosures for homeowners experiencing financial hardship during COVID-19 pandemic. Since the foreclosure moratorium expired at the beginning of this year, foreclosure filings and judgments have increased, thereby increasing homeowner vulnerability to deed theft scams. To combat deed theft cases, our office uses both criminal and civil law. While criminal charges are generally our preferred response because of the value of the homes in question and the impact that these crimes have on victims, civil law is an important tool where the statute of limitations or other requirements prevent our office from prosecuting a case. The OIG regularly works with partners in local law enforcement, local government, and legal services organizations to coordinate our response to deed theft. Since the fourth quarter of 2019, the OIG has chaired the Deed Theft Task Force, which is comprised of members of our office, district attorneys' offices within and outside of New York City, the Sheriff's Office, the Department of Finance, and legal aid and other law enforcement and civil agencies. We discuss current trends in detecting, investigating, and prosecuting deed theft, share resources and analytics, and exchange ideas on how to prosecute these complex crimes more effectively. Before we discuss our recommended changes to the law, we would be remiss to not mention the programs that exist to help homeowners in financial distress stay in their homes. These programs highlight ways to protect homeowners without resorting to prosecution or enforcement actions. The clearest example of this is the Homeowner Protection Program, or HOP. When faced with the understandingly frightening prospect of losing one's home, many people are unsure of where to turn or even embarrassed to ask for help. The best protection against this threat is to make sure homeowners can identify trustworthy organizations that can help them confront and resolve the legal and financial challenges they face. Since 2012, the OAG has dedicated over $140 million in settlement funds to this program. Our office's settlement funds unfortunately dried up, but the legislature stepped in to fully fund and support HOP, including allocating $35 million in HOP in the last year's enacted budget. This support is vital to protecting homeowners and homeownership in New York State, and I thank you for prioritizing the program. In its 10 years of existence, HOP has helped over 100,000 families statewide avoid foreclosure by providing free, high-quality assistance. I also should note that the OAG has long supported community investments to address issues like zombie properties and supporting community land trusts, because all of these strategies are necessary to provide comprehensive assistance to neighborhoods and support stable homeownership. Beyond general assistance for homeowners in distress, we need to continue to be creative and find ways to reach especially vulnerable homeowners to advise them about how they can protect their homes. In 2020, Attorney General James launched the Protect Our Homes campaign. At an outreach event co-hosted by Senator Myrie, the AG, Senator Myrie, and hundreds of volunteers knocked on over 3,000 Brooklyn homes and left materials to advise homeowners about how to avoid deed theft scams. The AG has also supported the establishment of broad non-solicitation zones within Brooklyn to prevent homeowners from receiving aggressive, unwelcome solicitations by individuals seeking to purchase their homes. Our office testified in favor of such a zone at a hearing in June convened by the New York State Department of State in connection with its investigation in whether to have a broader cease and desist zone in Brooklyn. We encourage residents and other impacted individuals submit complaints about unwanted or aggressive solicitations to the Department of State. And as another aside, I want to just say that programs like the tax lien and the third-party transfer program also need to be re-examined so that we can ensure we are doing everything possible to preserve home ownership. We'd now like to turn to several possible legislative solutions to address deed theft, and we welcome the opportunity to work with all of you to advance these recommendations along with the other ideas that are raised in today's hearing. Deed theft takes many forms and is constantly evolving. As such, the solutions we are recommending are diverse and aim to create a variety of tools, both to enhance law enforcement and also safeguard the system to protect against theft. The first recommendation we have is to strengthen out GBL 349. Strengthening protections against unfair and deceptive business practices would provide our office with a valuable tool for combating deed theft. New York law currently only prohibits deceptive business practices. Amending this law, which I would note would be then in line with many other states across the country, through the Consumer and Small Business Protection Act, would enable the Attorney General to also seek damages or enjoin business practices that are unfair and abusive as to cause substantial injury to consumers. This would be a really critical tool in helping us, assist a wide range of homeowners who are facing deed theft. And now I want to turn it over to my colleague Raj for additional recommendations.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Assistant Attorney General Gerard Murphy. I would agree with Mr. Lienhard with respect to giving more transparency to shell companies as well as a modification of the current statute of limitations. I think that would be really helpful. As far as voiding title, in 2019, the legislature took an important step by passing the deed theft bill, which provided new tools to fight deed theft. At that time, a new provision was added to the Criminal Procedure Law 420.45, setting out a process for DA's offices or the Attorney General's offices to void title when there is a conviction or guilty plea for offering a false instrument for filing. As noted earlier, because deed theft happens in a variety of ways, and the crimes enumerated in the law that allow a DA to void the false filings are too narrow, our office would propose a change which would include more violations of the penal laws, such as grand larceny, criminal possession of a stolen property, scheme to defraud, which would give us more tools to fight deed fraud. Actually, we have a case right now where, because of a statute of limitation issue, we charged criminal possession of a stolen property because the deed thief was still in possession of the property, and that case is currently being litigated in New York County Supreme Court. We think the laws should be expanded to include the other crimes that the DAs or the AG are likely to charge for deed theft. Lis pendens, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, that can be used both offensively and defensively. Certainly deed thieves use lis pendens to try to legitimize their illegitimate claims to property. In addition to finding other ways to restore property to its rightful owner, we also recommend identifying ways to make it more difficult for scammers to transfer title when there are signs that a potential deed theft has occurred. We would recommend establishing a parallel provision to allow prosecutors to file the equivalent of a lis pendens when a prosecutor receives a deed theft complaint and there's credible evidence that helps establish that a deed theft has actually occurred. This would help protect many vulnerable homeowners who might have the capacity to take civil action. Penal law changes. We recommend that the legislature consider amending the penal law to establish a new crime of deed theft. Establishing a specific crime of deed theft would serve two purposes. First, aggravating and mitigating factors can only be based on the crime's impact on the victim or the vulnerability of the victim. I see I'm running out of time. We also, as per our testimony that has been provided in advance of this hearing, reforming the role of notaries, which the State Senate and the Assembly has taken great strides in trying to make notaries the first line of defense with respect to combating deed theft. As far as eviction, partition proceedings, courts should be required to stay eviction or partition proceedings when there is a pending investigation or lawsuit by a relevant law enforcement office. Keeping current tenants and even the rightful owners in their home must be a priority while ownership is in question. Doing so not only limits the potential damage of deed theft, it also puts the homeowner in the better position to assert their rights and stay housed. And I think it addresses some of what we heard earlier in this presentation. With the homeowner and the current tenants in place, the people attempting to steal the property would be unable to occupy the property, damage it, or remove the owner's personal property, or collect rental income from the property that they don't rightfully own. So these are just some of our ideas. To conclude, the Attorney General's office is very committed to combating thief theft. We certainly have active indictments in both Manhattan and Queens right now. We expect another case coming up relatively soon with respect to a deed theft ring. And we look forward to working together, moving forward to strengthen the laws and help prevent this type of theft.
Thank you. First, thanks for acknowledging the the homeowner protection program, which we've worked very hard with your office to protect over the protecting the protection over a number of years. In some budgets, it was a challenge. Can you just talk? We've noted you've noted this sort of the breadth of the problem, the number of complaints that we see. Can you talk about sort of how those are processed? Of those 300 some odd complaints, sort of how are they processed? What is the sort of outcome of complaints? How many of them lead to formal investigations? How many of them lead to court actions? Just what's the sort of range of activities and how?
We'd be happy to pull together more statistics for you, and but off the top of my head, I would say I think we often hear about deed theft way too late. And so many of the complaints that we do receive have statute of limitations issues. We also, but we do review all of them to see where we can respond. We work collaboratively with the local DA's office, so we refer many over there where it's more appropriate for them to prosecute. And then we do have, some staff on hand to prosecute them, by our office as well. But we are happy to follow up with you on some of the stats. I didn't bring those with me.
Okay. Can you give us, I recognize you don't have hard numbers in front of you, but just a rough sense? Are there
The number of cases we have pending?
dozens of cases, hundreds of cases, single digits?
We're probably in the dozens of cases that we have capacity ourselves to prosecute.
Okay, and is the limiting factor on that the capacity of your office or the sort of timing and quality of the cases, or?
It's a combination of both. Certainly, we could always use more resources, even though I wasn't speaking on behalf of myself alone. But it's really the limitations of the law, the burden we have, as well as the statute of limitations creates the biggest problems for us. And I will, proving fraud or deception is very challenging in court, which is why we're also very strenuously advocating to expand the consumer protections to include unfairness and abusiveness, because we think that those will give us additional tools to address some of these issues.
Right, and that's been a long-running push
Yeah.
for a lot of. I think I was chairing the Consumer Affairs Committee of the Assembly in 2017 when we first took that up. So
I was back in legal services then, yes.
Yeah, it was a number of
I
years
don't know if
ago.
you have anything to add. But.
I think you've covered
Yeah.
everything well.
Can you talk more about the statute of limitations issues? Did I understand correctly that you're often in a position of looking for a criminal charge where the statute has not run, like possession of stolen property or some other such thing?
Well, we have used criminal possession of stolen property when the statute of limitation on the grand larceny of the home has occurred. So again, we have, I will name a name, Joseph McConney. We have an indictment that's currently pending in New York State Supreme Court, where that is the chief charge, along with certain residential mortgage fraud. But we have been creative in trying to combat some of the issues we see with the statute of limitations. Actually, Assistant Attorney General Nazi Modiri, who's with me today in the chamber, she's the chief prosecutor on that case.
Okay. And so there are a series of criminal statutes of limitations that you would recommend extending?
Could be more like the fraud statute of limitations. Typically in a criminal prosecution, the statute of limitations on felony charges are 5 years. There are some instances where there are no statute of limitations, such as murder cases, but as far as extending statute of limitations in criminal cases, it's very limited with respect to the powers we have. Maybe there's a possibility of when the fraud is discovered, that could be the start time of the statute of limitations, which would help the homeowner that's been defrauded and doesn't know that they've been defrauded to start the statute of limitations. We see, in the complaints that come through our office, a lot of the or a number of the properties are abandoned or unloved, or for a variety of reasons, where owners are sick and in hospitals. We have homeless owners of properties that have been taken advantage of. We have people that have mental health issues that are not taking care of property. So that may be able to help as some sort of extension of the statute of limitations once the fraud has been detected.
That's sort of a discovery, a rule of when it was discovered rather than when the initial action occurred.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. And we're talking, if I'm not mistaken, we're also talking about a separate statute of limitations issues with respect to HETPA. I guess there's a 2-year statute of limitations for voiding the sale. Is that correct?
The deed? I need to just double check that. Didn't look at that this morning.
Okay.
There is some recent case law that if a deed is forged, so typically we've been hearing about loan modification scams or bait and switch scams where people are looking to refinance their house and take some equity out, and all of a sudden the fraudster puts a pile of papers in front of the victim and has them sign. But in the case which we do run across, where an absentee owner or an owner that can't be located, the deed thief may just forge the deed. And in those cases, once a deed is forged without permission or authority, that's the case is the transfer is void ab initio. So that's something we deal with, and it shows the differences between a forged deed as well as obtaining a house by fraud.
Okay, so I'm out of time. I may have follow-up questions, but let's go to Senator Myrie.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Attorney General's office for the work that you've done in this space. And obviously, we've worked together and looking forward to continuing to do so. The concept of deed theft, to me, seems pretty simple, but the execution is often incredibly complicated, labyrinth of paperwork and LLCs, et cetera. Can you, for the folks who don't follow this stuff every day, for the non-lawyers, for the homeowners, can you explain why something that seems so simple, you took my property, you took my equity, and you did so under false pretenses, why it's so difficult for us to find consequences for the individuals that are perpetrating it?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I have faced in litigating these cases over the years, because I also litigated these cases when I was in legal services, is that there is a pile of paper with signatures on it. And judges are, understandably, but inherently skeptical of sort of, then it's one person's word against the others, and you have documentary evidence to the contrary, right? So we have used a variety of strategies to overcome those barriers, but it makes it just, the higher standard of proof you have, the more difficult that those kinds of pieces of evidence are to overcome. And I think there's also a part of this is just educating, judges as well about sort of what's happening in communities and sort of what people are facing. Because I think, the judge may not be aware of that this is something that happens on a regular basis. So that's one thing. And there's also sort of availability of witnesses. If it takes a very long time for these kinds of cases to get prosecuted, people might not even come to a lawyer for a very long time, and so it might be harder to find people who they spoke with to sort of, help support the case. So, anything else?
Right. And a lot of the victims of these crimes may be real estate rich because of the increase in value in these properties in some of these neighborhoods, but they're cash poor, and they don't have the ability to hire an attorney and fight for their rights to the property, which is frustrating. And certainly the people that steal these deeds are generally tend to be very wealthy and employ some of the best attorneys to frustrate the true owner of the properties.
Thank you.
Senator Brisbane.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here and just the great work you're doing in the AG's office. I really appreciate it. I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the resources you have available, and just wanted to get a better sense of what those resources are, if you can quantify them. I know you have the mortgage enforcement unit in the AG's office, but if you could just give us a sense of how many people in the AG's office are working on deed theft cases, the staffing size, and any budget numbers allocated within the AG's office towards fighting deed theft.
We're going to get back to you on budget numbers because that's not my area of expertise.
Sure. In the criminal division, we have a real estate enforcement unit that is budgeted for 2 attorneys. I'm also public corruption, so we have public corruption attorneys, approximately 10 that can also work on these cases and are working on these cases. I've told my lawyers that every public corruption attorney is a real estate enforcement attorney as well. And currently, we're in the criminal division, we're mobilizing the CEFC, the Financial Crimes Unit, to work on these cases as well. So certainly, the Attorney General sees that this is a huge problem and is allocating more and more resources to fight this issue.
So I heard 10, 2, and then another unit, so like around 20 people or so? Or is it
I would say so, and especially when you add our analysts, which are paralegals that help us with the investigations.
And you sometimes outsource the cases to third-party legal organizations, yes? Or?
We sometimes, with respect to the deed theft task force we spoke about, if we receive a complaint that we think may be better handled by the Queens District Attorney's Office, Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, Manhattan DA's Office, we sometimes refer those cases to them. And it's a fact-by-fact basis.
Do you have a sense of how often you do that?
We refer a lot of cases to local DA's offices if we think that they're the better law enforcement agency to handle a case.
Got you. And I also just wanted to make sure I heard correctly. Earlier you were saying that if the AG's office brings a successful case against a deed theft scammer, that returns the title to the original homeowner, right?
Well, right now we're limited by the criminal procedure law to offering a false instrument for filing charges. And there we can institute a court procedure to return the property to the rightful owner. We do have a case in Queens where we got there very early and we were able to get 2 properties back to the rightful owner, or the estate of the rightful owner.
Okay, so a successful case by the AG will initiate a court procedure which may or may not guarantee the title back to the original homeowner.
That's
Depending
correct,
on the
Senator.
conviction, yeah. And
Gotcha.
just to clarify, because I know Rod is doing an amazing job of mobilizing a lot of forces to address this issue, but all of those attorneys also deal with a wide range of other financial crimes. So I don't want you to think we have a 20-person dedicated unit to this. This in addition to many other things.
Got you. And just thinking of some of your successful cases where the title has been returned to the homeowner, the original owner, excuse me. Let's say the deed theft scammer had taken out a mortgage on the property after stealing it. Have you seen cases where that mortgage has been canceled, or you've seen the results of what happened to that mortgage that the thief took out?
I have not seen examples of that, sir.
Okay.
I think it's a very difficult issue to address.
Yeah.
We have, if you can demonstrate that there was some sort of conspiracy between the parties, then it's easier to void that mortgage. But otherwise, it's a challenge to figure out how to deal with the debt on the property, independent of just getting title back. And I think that an equal challenge is if a mortgage is paid off or partially paid off by the scammer, figuring out a way for that homeowner to get the financing to restore title to their name is also difficult. There used to be a long time ago resources for homeowners to do that, but there isn't right. That it's much more limited now.
Gotcha.
But I'm sure that the folks who are working in legal services office who are testifying later can talk more specifically about that.
Thank you. And I still have 30 seconds. I just want to circle back on when you do outsource to the DA's office. Do you ever outsource to non-governmental legal service organizations, any nonprofits or any others?
When we are initially screening cases, we very frequently refer to the HOP network because
Gotcha.
People, particularly if they're in their home, they really need to consult with a lawyer immediately on the civil side to see what kind of action can be taken to keep them in the house. So yes, we work very closely with the HOP network.
Thank you. And that's my time. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you. I just want to follow up. So before we were talking about resources, and I think you switched and said, this is your opinion that more resources would be useful. Which
I like to vet things with our office. I'm still getting used to being in government.
I think that's we appreciate your opinion. That's what you're here for. But no, in a couple of your recommendations involve giving additional powers to prosecutors,
Yes.
like in Liz Penn's, and you said that the sort of limiting factors on the activities you're doing are a combination of cases coming to you late and maybe not being sound enough to proceed, and then also resources. So I'll just say, I gather you're not in a position today to talk about what additional resources the office would need specifically, but we have a budget process that is beginning in a couple of months, and just so there's several pieces of information that you've suggested, that you've offered to follow up on. One thing I think we would like to see is a proposal from the Attorney General's office about what kind of resources would be necessary to give you the capacity to have a really robust enforcement mechanism that's up to the challenges that we've been talking about today, and especially to the extent we're talking about additional powers and additional, through legislation. I think we should think of this as a package. Good laws don't work very well if there aren't the resources to implement them.
We appreciate that, and we'd love to put that together for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, we have some witnesses from the city government. We have Colette McCain, who is the first deputy city registrar, and Julio Lopez, who's an undersheriff, and Veronica Robles, the associate fraud investigator for the sheriff's office. Okay, and since we have three, if you could just identify yourselves for the record and for the transcript before you begin.
Okay. My name is Colette McCain Jocks. I'm the first deputy city register for the Division of Land Records.
My name is Detective Veronica Robles from the New York City Sheriff's Office.
My name is Julio Lopez, Undersheriff of the New York City Sheriff's Office.
And we'll hear testimony in that order, is that?
I'll be speaking.
Great, okay, thank you.
All right. So, good afternoon, Chair Kavanaugh and members of the New York State Senate Standing Committee on Housing, Construction, and Community Development. My name is Colette McCain Jocks, and I am the first Deputy City Register for the New York City Department of Finance. I'm joined today by Undersheriff Julio Lopez and Veronica Robles, the Associate Fraud Investigator at the New York City Sheriff's Office. My testimony today will quickly review the history of the Department of Finances and the Sheriff's Office deed fraud investigations and describe our current efforts in this area. I will also discuss our public outreach efforts as well as potential legislative fixes that would strengthen deed crime laws. Since 2014, the Department of Finance, City Register, and the Sheriff's Office have taken many proactive steps to reduce deed fraud and investigative crimes related to deed fraud. Our investigations in the past 8 years have resulted in the arrest of 57 suspects tied to fraudulent property transactions. The total value of these properties was in excess of $52,320,000. In addition, the Sheriff's Office provided testimony and evidence for the New York County Grand Jury report concerning deed fraud in New York City issued in December 2018. State law requires the city register to perform ministerial acts of recording a deed as long as it is in recordable order, meaning that it is certified by a public notary, it is a seller's signature and a buyer's signature under certain circumstances, and it includes all other required legal documents. The city register does not have discretion with respect to recording such deeds that meet the requirements of state law. We have trained city register staff to better detect documents that may be forged or fraudulent, and put in place several safeguards, including the involvement of the sheriff's office in the review process. After an internal review of our recording process, we discovered that quitclaim deeds are the type most often used by perpetrators of deed fraud. The staff now pays particular attention to these submissions when there is discrepancy identified that appears to indicate possible fraud. It is referred to the sheriff's office for review. Examples of other types of recording that would trigger an additional review are those with the sale price far below the market value, multiple transfers between LLCs in a short period of time, and transfers by people or entities suspected of committing or known to have committed deed fraud in the past. These safeguards have been in effect since July 2014, when we increased our focus on deed fraud. In addition, as a part of the review process, City Register staff verified the notary information on the New York State Attorney General's office website, and discrepancies are sent to the Sheriff's Office for a closer review. We also automatically inform property owners by mail when a deed is filed against their property. The quicker someone catches fraudulent activity, the quicker the problem can be addressed. In addition to our efforts in my office, as well as the Sheriff's Office, the Department of Finance's Outreach Unit has been informing event attendees about deed fraud and how to prevent it since early 2016. Their work has reached over 100,000 taxpayers at over 1,500 events. During the outreach sessions, we give presentations which include a section on deed fraud and what people can do to protect their properties. The outreach unit has distributed tens of thousands of our deed fraud guides, which is available at www.nyc.gov/finance, and it's in 10 languages. The outreach unit attends deed fraud educational forums hosted by elected officials and community leaders. One example that we considered the ideal model was the town hall, promoted as Don't Lose Your Home to Scammers, hosted by former council member Cornegie, the outreach unit, and the Sheriff's Office. This event was co-sponsored by the Brooklyn Bar Association, the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, and Brooklyn Neighborhood Services. Over the past few years, the outreach unit also has conducted hundreds of train-the-trainer sessions at which they educate elected officials and community-based organizations on topics of deed fraud. This is an ongoing effort, and we encourage members interested to contact us to schedule a session. The Department of Finance, in consultation with the New York City County District Attorney's Office, has met and discussed how to strengthen penalties to prevent future deed fraud activities. Some of the proposals are to increase the penalty for forging of deed, mortgage, or similar instruments, and dedicate the crime of filing a false instrument in the first degree to a filing a false real property instrument or attempted filing of such an instrument. Increase the penalty for the filing or attempted filing of false instruments related to real property. Create a new group of crimes involving fraudulent notarization, because the deed fraud problem is inevitable, enhanced by the lax or fraudulent actions of duly commissioned notary publics and commissioner of deeds. Amend the executive law to either impose a journal and or similar record-keeping requirements on notary publics and commissioner of deeds with respect to notarization of a real property instrument, or authorize the city and county outside of New York City to, by local law, impose these requirements. I want to thank the committee for allowing me to speak today, and I hope that our testimony has given you a useful overview of where we stand regarding deed fraud. I will take any questions you may have at this time.
And do we have testimony from the others, or are you just here to?
No testimony.
Be supportive? Okay, thank you. I'm going to see if my colleagues want to go first on this one, or?
Yeah. You can go.
Senator Myrie.
Great. So thank you all for your attendance. Forgive me for not knowing the complete inner workings of the city register. I just want to make sure I'm clear on how the process works. If someone, you hold all of the deeds, titles, et cetera, in the city of New York? Is that correct?
Yes, for the 4 boroughs, Staten Island is governed under the county clerk.
Okay, got it. And so you mentioned a number of the mechanisms you have put in place to catch when some of this happens. I guess I'm just a little confused as to how we can have some of these triggers, like the price differentiation, severely under market, or whether it's transferring a bunch of LLCs. I think it's going to be a recurring theme today. Or if someone has a history of this type of illegal activity, I'm just wondering how then do people slip through the cracks, given some of what we've heard in the testimony from the impacted individuals. And again, I'm not assigning blame to you guys, but
No.
I would really love for you to tell us how it's happening so that we can figure out how to get to it.
Understandable, because customers come in and they access that as well. But what people have to understand, our job is to record the document as long as it's in recordable form. It's out of our jurisdiction to scrutinize the documents, but we did develop a quality review unit and try to block some of those documents that's coming in. So the thing is, if the document comes into the office and it's recordable, it's our job to accept it.
Even if you, and thank you for that. So this is a power and jurisdictional question, because you don't have, even if you had reservations about, this doesn't smell right, as long as it has met the requirements, the statutory requirements, you are required to sign it.
Legally, we are required to accept it.
Okay. And Detective Robles, can you talk to us about what some of the sort of telltale signs are, when you're looking at stuff, and perhaps some warnings that we could give to homeowners about what to look out for on the fraud?
Sure. Something that we do see when it goes from the registrar's office and it comes to us, we make sure we see if the social security numbers match, if there's different on ACRIS, if there is a chain and the chain of one owner to another owner, and if it doesn't match, you could look at that as well. There are different factors that we look at also with the document itself. There could be a presenter and the buyer could be the same address, and you'll see that on the document, and it would be recorded on ACRIS.
Thank you, Chair.
Senator Brisport.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. Let me see this. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to get clarification on one thing. I wasn't sure if I heard correctly. Did you, at one point, it sounded like you said there was one particular type of deed that was the most common?
Right, the
Which?
quick claim deed.
The quick claim deed.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Quit
Quick
claim.
claim.
Thank you.
Yes.
And there's, in terms of when these deeds are shifting between LLCs, what is considered abnormal? Is it any time an LLC transferred to another LLC, or within a certain
Yeah,
time
in a
frame?
short period
short
of
period of
time,
time?
yes.
What's considered short?
Like 6 months, something like that.
Got you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, have you ever investigated any of the financial institutions that are lending to deed thieves?
No.
Or seen any patterns in particular banks or financial institutions that lend to them?
No, not with the banks, no.
Okay. Thank you. Good.
Okay. So just a few follow-up questions. Can you just give a sense of the sort of frequency with which somebody is getting a deed that they're supposed to record, and there's some question, based on the face of the document, there's some questions, there's something appears questionable? Like, how often does that happen?
Not too often. So if a deed comes in and we feel like, something is just not right, what we would do, we would review it, and then we would deem it as possible fraud, and at that point, we would refer it to the sheriff's office for further review.
Okay, so and the quality review unit, is that the unit that reviews it to determine whether there's?
Yes, they're trained to look at different aspects in the document to see if there's an issue.
So there are people whose job it is to sort of do the, to receive the thing, to do a sort of review to make sure it's, accurate, complete
Right.
on its face. And then if that person doesn't see any flags, they
Pass.
simply record it.
Yeah.
If they do see a flag, they then refer it to the quality review unit.
Yes, and then the quality review unit would look at it a little more to see if it's really an issue. And if it is, then at that point, we refer it to the sheriff's office for investigation.
And do you have statistics on how many deeds get referred to the quality review unit?
Well, I could tell you from 2019 all the way up until the second quarter, which is July to September of this year, 2022, we referred 367 documents to the sheriff's office.
367 to the sheriff's office?
367, yes.
And is there a significantly large, do most of the ones that go to the quality review unit go to the sheriff's office, or is there?
Yes, yes, it has to go to the quality review unit first to deem it as possible fraud before even sending it to the sheriff. Some of them we don't have to send. We record over 550,000 documents a year, so.
So 550,000 documents a year, and then is the number that goes to the quality review unit a lot larger than the 367? Are there thousands going to quality review and then there?
No.
Okay, so most of the ones that go to quality review go to precede the suspicions of the initial
Yeah.
reviewer are kind of.
I would say about a third of them
Okay.
may be for it. I would say a third.
Okay, we may want to follow up with.
Yeah, I have
statistics
actual
levels.
numbers.
And do you have sort of information of the 367, where they're, are they sort of geographic, and like what parts of the city do they come from, or what kinds of transactions they are, or are they?
They come from all boroughs, but the highest borough being Brooklyn.
Right. That's also going to be a theme today, I think. And then with the 367 that went to the sheriff's office, what's the sort of disposition of those?
Well, I don't have those numbers for you right now, but I can gladly share those with you and collect that data for you. But like I said, once it comes to whatever the city registrar sends to us, we do have a deed fraud unit, and then we will vet the documents ourselves, and then just use our resources to start a preliminary investigation if needed. Sometimes we will call the owner of from where the address will show the last owner before it gets transferred, and we will call the owner and ask them if they have been subject to any if they sold their homes illegally, or if they even knew about the action that has occurred against their property.
Okay, and can you just give again a sense, even if you don't have the stats in front of you, but roughly how often do you find that those referrals are in fact a legitimate problem?
I would say from probably around less than half. Half of them, yeah.
And so then you do a preliminary investigation, you determine there's a problem, and then can you just tell us how it proceeds from there?
Well, after the preliminary investigation, we begin to contact the owner, which is essentially the victim, and go over their take on what happened to their property, if they have spoken to anybody, if they're on foreclosure proceedings, if they've spoken to anybody, if anybody's come to their home and asked them if they're selling their home and if they're giving, if they've signed any documents recently that maybe they didn't read thoroughly, or they've been just taking their statements, and from that we move on to the buyer, and then we just continue to just dig into the investigation and see what exactly happened during the transfer.
If you determine that there's been improper behavior, what happens next?
Then we would refer it to the district attorney's office.
Okay, and how many referrals do you make to the district attorney's office?
I can't give you that because we do citywide. So, but I can say that a lot of them do go to the Brooklyn DA's office.
Okay, would you have stats? I mean, even if you don't have them at your fingertips here today, would you be able to provide?
Yes. How many? Yes.
How many referrals to the DA's offices?
Yes.
To each of, I guess,
To
so
each.
you'd be referring to four. You're not
Correct.
likely to be referring to Staten Island.
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'd appreciate it if we could follow up with you. I think we also did not get a written copy of your testimony unless I'm. Oh, there we go. We apparently did get a written. I thought this was the next one, but, all right, so hot off the presses and right under the wire, we do have it, so. And again, you mentioned a couple of instances where you might be looking for changes in statutes. You mentioned local laws. I guess, can you just talk about how you would want to see the law changed and how that would benefit your ability to address this problem?
So if the law is changed and they give like the person that's still in the property more time, because I've gone and testified for the district attorney's office several times, and a lot of times it's the people are indicted and they're just not given enough time. It's like they could be back on the street. I've seen a guy come into our office like 2-3 times and he was arrested. And then like 2 weeks later, he was back in the office. So it seems like they're not getting enough time for this crime. And they're allowed to keep doing it over and over again.
So more severe penalties when people are convicted.
Yes. And also having the notaries, making the notaries accountable.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? In what way are they not accountable at this point?
Well, they don't keep a list of all the people that they notarize documents for. So if they keep a list, I mean, in some instances they can't help it because sometimes people, they give you fake IDs with fake names, but if they at least keep a list and keep track of that and make it more controllable, it might work out better for.
And is that, would your office, if there were such a list, like if there were, I don't know, some online way of checking whether a document had been properly notified, would your office use that in the course of reviewing titles, documents that seem suspect?
We do check the New York State site for all notaries to make sure that they're up to date and their notary license hasn't expired. So we do check that when we do re-examine the documents. So, but in certain instances, you know, they still wind up being part of the deed fraud.
Right.
It usually turns out to be a whole group that's part of a deed fraud.
And you believe that notaries are purporting to witness a signature when, in fact, that person is not signed?
Sometimes it's
Okay.
possible.
All right, again, thank you all for your testimony, unless any of my colleagues have any. Senator Myrie.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under Sheriff, the New York Sheriff's Office also handles evictions. And so I'm hoping if you can speak to what the overlap may be. You know, this is an office both charged with trying to prevent homeowners from losing their homes, but also you guys are the ones that show up when there's an eviction happening. And I'm wondering if you can speak to what that experience has been like and whether there are any other, any tools that the office uses to ensure that, you know, eviction is something of last resort for people who have been potentially victimized.
From the sheriff's justice standpoint, we're here to follow every order according to his command. And we don't look behind the processes a lot of times. There may be times where somebody may object to the eviction process from the sheriff's office, but they would have to bring that fight to the court because we can't step in the shoes of the plaintiff or the defendant. We have to be a neutral party in this. And sometimes we might be suspicious, but even then we still have to follow the order as it is. We may make recommendations, for example, the elderly. They might make a claim. We'll refer them to Adult Protective Services before we do that eviction and have them make sure that they are okay, and they would bring the process to the court, say, hey, we have to stop this eviction before the sheriff goes, and because there's something here that may not be right. So those are some of the issues. That's the main issue we deal with. But as far as the order being issued to us, we follow it according to the law. That's what the sheriffs do. We're just the enforcement officer. And then if we get there and we see an adult that may be disabled, we'll make those recommendations and stop at that point.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you all for your testimony today, and we'll follow up on the various matters we've discussed. So next up, we're going to hear from four individuals who have been directly impacted by. Okay, I'm getting a. Okay, apparently a couple of the people that were expecting this panel are not here yet, but I think we have with us Eric Byam and Maria Bourne are here. Is that right? Okay, so if you could come up and sit at the table, and we're expecting Michael Baker and Samuel Troutman. So if they do get here, if somebody could just maybe direct them to the witness table, and otherwise we'll try to work them in later in the program. Okay, so we're going to have 5 minutes from each of you to testify, and then questions and discussions with the panel after that. So I don't know which of you would like to begin?
Okay, I'll begin.
Thank you.
Well, I have
For the purpose of the person who's recording and transcribing, just state your name for the record and then proceed.
My name is Maria Bourne, and I'm a victim of this deed fraud. Actually, I have an active case going on in court right this minute. In 2017, I had gone to the DA's office after dealing with two individuals, and I realized that is what they were doing. I got no help from them. I was told to go and get an attorney, which eventually I did. I was trying to refinance my properties. Over $1 million was taken from my properties. I saw none of that. And a foreclosure proceeding had started. The two individuals that do this, I understood that they were in something as far as legal is concerned already. And I'm still waiting now. Actually, the case had given one of the crooks my property, so I went to the appeal court. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up my property. I'll fight to the end, whatever it takes. I retain an attorney, which is draining me at this point, but I'm still going to fight.
Thank you. Mr.
My
Byam.
name is Eric Byam. Okay, 2014. I'm the third generation from Bed-Stuy. It went from my grandfather to my father to me. At the time, I'm 58. I want to retire, give my son a college education. I decided to sell my property. 413, somebody introduced me to City Abstract, Liberty Avenue, Islam, Tom Sheen, and David Naran. Thomas Sheen and David just got busted by the feds for messing with people's deed, money laundering, tax evasion. When I sold them my property, at the time, They had me sign a quitclaim deed. That's how they started. Now, it's fraud by deception. They had me sign the paperwork at Liberty Abstract and then took me to another title company, which is AM Title Company. So now, I go to the district attorney. I can't help you because it's a civil matter. What are you talking? Mr. Bime, I know you're mad. No disrespect. Somebody lucky I ain't doing 25 to life because they got me for $1 million. I didn't sell. I sold the property. They didn't get my money. My lawyer was in on it. The two lawyers, the two title companies. David, he's the owner of the title company, and he takes me to another title company. Thomas Sheehan, he's in jail right now. The feds just picked them both up for a month ago. I go to court, the state court. When I put the paperwork in, they took the property in 2014. His answer is statute of limitation on $1 million? Come on. And at the end of the day, they can't even find Islam. He's on the deed. I don't know if he's the snitch or he's running. I don't know what's going on. But I go to court in January with the state. But the feds got two of these guys locked up for what they did. All I want is my property back. I can't get the money because I know the feds then froze the accounts. That's a waste of time. And 413 Green Avenue, listen, Bed-Stuy wasn't what it was back in 1974. Now it's totally different. All I wanted to do was retire. My son is a software engineer, and he had to learn it through YouTube. I had to pay child support. They don't want to hear that crap. Everybody want their money. Please, write the judges. Listen, right? I had to pay my lawyer 15 grand. And how they get you? They tie your money up so you can't go to court and fight. You can't pay attorney. If you ain't got no money to pay an attorney, you lose. And they drag it, and they drag it, and they drag it, and y'all know who the players is. Y'all know who the players is. But I ain't gonna say who the players is. And I'm like, yo, listen, I'm telling you, I had people, no disrespect, that wanted to do, listen, 25 to life, I said, leave it alone. I'm trusted in the process. I believe in God. You understand? But let me tell you something. In my time, when I was younger, somebody, they would have been found in the trunk somewhere. Trust me, with two in their head, with $1 million. But I said, leave them alone. I'm a nice guy. But I deal with some dangerous people. And I told them, leave it alone. Let me trust in the process. And the process is working. They got busted by the feds for what they did. All I ask is, please, write to two judges. I go to court in January. I don't know how to stay. When I went to the district attorney, he said it's a chain of command. That's how it works. What are you talking about? I'm the lowest guy on the totem pole. You got to go to the state and the feds. They got busted. All I ask y'all to do is help me. Help us. We want our property back. We've been there for a long time. And these people, they come in the community, they switch up paperwork, they do this, and they do that. Next thing you know, we out of our house and the banks. And you know what? They stole all the equity out the property, $1.8 million, under LLCs. You understand? And you know what? I'm done. Y'all heard it. And I left all y'all the paperwork to look up the casework, please, and follow up and write to the state and the judge. All I want is my house back because I can't get the money. They being convicted for what they did. It's only right that I get my house back. Thank you.
So let me just thank you both for your testimony today, for being here, and for, please.
Right here, I have a deed transfer with signatures that don't belong to me.
So again, I think we are going to have comments or questions from the other members of the panel. But I just want to thank you for being here, for sharing your stories, and also for both kind of demonstrating the kind of tenacity to stick with these cases and to seek justice, and also bringing the anger into this room, because we know there's a lot of anger out there in the community, and it's important that these hearings are not just about the lawyers and the potential changes in the words of the law, but also about seeking justice for people. And I think Senator Myrie has a comment.
Yeah. Let me just thank both of you for your bravery, for your vulnerability, for putting your story out there. This is a hard thing to deal with. I don't have to tell you, but it also can potentially be embarrassing. And there is shame that drives a lot of people to suffer in silence. You have not done that. You have stepped up.
At all. The judicial system is not for us either, because there's an attorney on here that claims he represents me, and I don't even know the individual. Never seen him in my life.
And this is the problem that we're trying to find some solutions for, but it's outrageous. I share in your outrage, Mr. Byam. I share in your outrage, Ms. Bourne. We shouldn't allow this. And you are one of the few that can make your way to 250 Broadway and to, come up with testimony and to find the temerity and bravery to say this in front of the public. For every Mr. Byam, for every Ms. Bourne, there are 10 more in the same situation that cannot testify, that are afraid to speak up, and that is the whole purpose of this hearing. And so I want to thank you again for your bravery, and also, Mr. Byam, you looking fly, came through dripping. So I want to end on some positivity, but we are here with you, and we're going to do everything in our power to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Myrie. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to thank you both for your testimonies. We needed to hear that, but we all did, including the people watching. That's what the point of this hearing is today, Mr. Byam. I represent Bed-Stuy. I'm your senator. I want to help out however I can. Which government agencies have you interacted? I heard the DA's office. Have you also reached out?
Attorney, he said it follows chain of command. We got him in court. We got him in court. This is how good God is. We got him in court, but the court's is backed up. It doesn't go to court to January, the state court. I get a phone call, Mr. Byam, they've been arrested by the feds. Now the feds got him. So who takes over? But my lawyer, he wrote the feds. He talked to the feds. One of them can't get bail because he's a convicted pedophile. He can't even get bail. He's a flight risk. Tom Sheehan, he's a flight risk. His other partner, he got bail. But they closed City Abstract. You understand? And my lawyer conferred with the feds, set my deed to the side, please. And I just need some backings of you fellows to write them, the state, and the feds. I left the paperwork for you guys to look at. It's all in the records. Look at the casework and the whole nine. Like I said, I have faith because it could be 25 to life. I'm serious. That's where I'm 58. That's the school I came from. We didn't settle things in court. We settle things in the street. I'm keeping it real, but I trust in the faith. My father said God is love. You know what? He is. Amen. I'm keeping it real.
And just so my office knows, have you already been in touch with the Attorney General's office?
How you think I got the letter here? She was the first one I wrote. That's why I got submitted here. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just one further question for Ms. Bourne? You mentioned the attorney that is on the paperwork purporting to represent you, but not someone you haven't met. Have you, to your knowledge,
I'm going to report him. We never met. I'm going to report him.
To the Office of Court Administration and to the Bar Association?
I can call his name, but I don't care.
Call his name.
Francis Hemming, ESQ, 30 Wall Street. And at 30 Wall Street, because I went to look for him, there's nothing there but mailboxes.
Wow. Is his name there? Is his name on the mailbox? No name.
I didn't look for the mailbox. After I see there's no person you can talk to, I just left. But I know where to take him.
Right. So I will just note this is something we've heard a couple of times today, where there are attorneys who are ostensibly representing people, which a couple of us on the panel are attorneys.
I've never seen him. I don't know what he looks like.
I
guess he know what I look like because these guys have a picture of my driver's license. Everything is listed in. Damn. So I guess he knows what I look like, but I never saw him. Never met with him.
How these people get to They come to your
For
house.
me, every time my lawyer said we got to meet, it's $5,000.
Wow.
So let me tell you something. I'm the one that got the paperwork. My people, I know people in real estate, they called me and sent me the paperwork that these guys got busted by the Fed. I did the work. I did most of the work, the research. I said, let me tell you something. Next time I see you, you ain't getting a dime until you give me some results. Because my faith in lawyers is shot. 2 title companies, 2 lawyers, 2 investors, they all beat me. They was all in on it.
Wow.
All of them, including my lawyer. And when I went there, I didn't have a lawyer. I retained a lawyer from that office, which is a conflict of interest. I didn't know. But when that $750,000, it disappeared. And then when my lawyer called him, he said, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, y'all don't want to talk about it? We know where the money went, what bank account it went into. We got the bank account that it went into. They don't want to talk. They them hard money lenders that's not even registered with the state of New York. They're not even registered. And they loaned them $1.8 million. My name is not on it. So I want my house back free and clear and let him go after Islam, which he got LLCs. He got 4 different houses under his LLC, and I know all of them. And like I said, the lawyers was in on it. And that before I know it, 5 years went by. Now they talking about statute of limitation. Okay.
Okay, well, again, thank you for your testimony, and we will be looking into this. And just to observe, I think, the role of attorneys, in this case, these cases is also very disturbing. So, and Senator Bridgeport would like to ask one more question as well, if you would.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more question, because my office is just very curious about the landscape of banks and financial institutions that are aiding and abetting. So I see the document from Chase for $725,000. Did you say another financial institution also participated?
No, they hard money lender. No, that's the account that the money went into. Mm-hmm. We know the account, but he don't want to answer who he gave the money to. Mm-hmm. And it's hard money lenders. Mm-hmm. When you look it up, they don't exist. They don't have an LLC. Listen, I'm not gonna call it who it is. Y'all know who it is. You want me to call it? The Jews. Y'all shit, hold up. I'm not being disgraceful. It's the fact. When I went, listen to me. I'm not discriminating, but you want me to lie? You want me to tell the truth? Come on. When I went to the office with Islam, he signed a $950,000 loan with this man to buy 413 Green Avenue. And then they turned around and bought $900,000 more from the same guy. I'm calling it how I see it. I'm not going to bite my tongue. I knew that was going to happen when I said that. It's not racism. It's the truth. But when you speak the truth, everybody claims it's racism. Y'all know the players in this game. But nobody wants to say it. If I'm wrong, let me know I'm wrong. But that's the player. Those was the players at City Abstract. Everybody knows about City Abstract. That's why they went there, because they was doing a lot of shady things, and a couple of them went to jail with this guy. Ask the feds. They'll tell you. Go and ask the feds. You understand? There's a lot of shady stuff going, and y'all know the players, but nobody wants to say because it's the truth. I'm a poor guy. I'm a poor man. What do I got to lose? What do I got to lose? You can't. Listen, I worked for cement and concrete workers for 30 years. I'm in the union. You can't do nothing to me. Nobody had done to me already. I'm going to survive. I'm going to eat. You can take whatever you want. I'm a hustler. My father taught me how to survive. I don't ask nobody for nothing. I'm humble, but I don't kiss nobody's ass. I don't do it because there's God in my life. And he ain't never let me down. I'm sorry. You sound upset, but God ain't never let me down. And I call it how I see it. I don't bite my tongue. I'm not racist. I'm not prejudiced, but I call it how I see it. They robbed me, and they was part of it. And everybody knows who's part of this game in the neighborhoods. You want me to lie and say it's black people? Black people we can't even read. Half of us can't even read and write. So don't even think about us stealing no property. Because when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, my father, my grandfather, they would whip my ass if you're talking about deed theft. They would hang me. I'm part of the Trinidadian descent. I feared my mother and father. My teeth would be flying all over the place if I said something wrong. What? Deed theft? That was unheard of in the 80s, 90s, and 2000. What? We was happy to have a roof over our head, and we played as kids, sir. We was happy then. So it's no disrespect to nobody. I'm just telling you what he did with me. He was so happy, and he took me, and he signed for that $950,000 check. Look at the record, and he just bought another $800,000. They steal the equity out of the properties and run off because you don't have to pay the taxes on the equity. But if you sell a property, guess what? You got to pay capital gains taxes, and you know Uncle Sam don't play that crap.
Okay. So
Think about it. And all his properties, all their properties, they do that too. They steal the equity. I'm talking about Tom and David and Islam. They steal the equity. Then they hide the money on the shell accounts. They don't have to, only thing they got to do is pay the mortgage. Or just pennies on the dollar. And if they don't feel like paying, guess what? Foreclose.
Okay, so again, thank you, Mr. Ryan, for being here for your testimony, and we are very much interested in seeking justice and restitution. I will say that from my perspective, identifying the ethnic or religious or racial identities of the perpetrators is not, helpful for this conversation. But we do appreciate the anger you have about the experience you had, and we are seeking to end this practice.
Thank you.
But I do feel like, just formally on behalf of the committee, we don't really tolerate.
Just do me one favor. This is election time. We don't want lip service. We want action, sir. No disrespect to you, and anybody on the panel. This is election time, and everybody running lip service. We don't want it. We want action. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
We are here to take action. This is a committee, and this is a legislature that has taken very aggressive action to protect tenants and homeowners over the last few years, and we expect to continue to do that. And we are very much here to identify solutions. But again, I just do need to formally say that it's very concerning when people bring the sort of racial or religious or ethnic background of the participants into the conversation. Okay, thank you.
Y'all told me to come here and tell the truth.
We appreciate we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? You good? You good? You good? You got any questions? Because I'm gonna keep it real. Because I could be in jail doing 25 to life, and that's real.
And I will note that we've been joined by Senator Salazar. Okay. And next up, we have a panel of legal service providers. We have Oda Friedheim, Yolanda Nicholson, and Arthur Burkle. And we're also expecting Scott Kowalski and Yara Calcano, who I understand are not here at the moment. Is that correct? But any of those 5 people who are here, if you could come up to testify.
We actually need that the other way because the camera has to pick it up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So again, thank each of you for being here. If you could begin just by before you offer your testimony, if you just state your name and affiliation for the transcription, and I don't know if any of you wants to begin.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, good morning, panel. First of all, thank you for holding this hearing on this incredible, important issue. Well, you heard already a lot of dramatic testimony this morning. My name is Oda Friedheim I'm a supervising attorney at the Legal Aid Society, and I've been involved in foreclosure prevention, but also importantly in deed theft cases. In fact, I started foreclosure practice with a deed theft case way back in 2000. So deed theft itself is nothing new. It's really in the long line of threatening homeownership of people of color, and particularly African Americans. And we see this again and again. And one of the things we have to take a look at is that today's crisis is not just a function of rising real estate prices, but it's also the aftermath of the predatory lending wave, which itself took out a humongous amount of equity and lifted it right from neighborhood of colors to Wall Street. And we're still dealing with the aftermath. And it is exactly these distressed and struggling homeowners that become target of deed theft, because the scammers have ways of finding people who are struggling because they're vulnerable, and they play on their hopes and make them promises. I just want to mention, and I think you all know this, that one of the tools I just want to reemphasize to combat deed theft is in fact the network of the hub network, basically, of free legal services and housing counselor, because so many homeowners that become victims either don't find their way to a lawyer, or in some cases, and sadly, we see them having ineffective lawyers. The other thing, of course, is the continuing effort, which has been promoted by the Attorney General, of doing education and outreach to prevent deed theft before it happens. And that, of course, has to continue. Now, deed theft comes in many, many shapes, and I'm sure you already heard that this morning. It's from outright foreclosure rescue scams to phony short sales, and more recently, predatory petition actions that are aimed at the surviving heirs of family homes that have been in the family for years and decades. I just want to mention that we do recognize and applaud the state legislature for having early on recognized some of these problems, deed theft, and for example, in 2006 already passed the Homeowner Equity Theft Protection Act, and followed later by another piece of legislation dealing with foreclosure rescue scammers like loan modification scams, and that was recently amended to include further prohibitions. Without getting into details, these are all very important pieces of legislation. And most recently, in 2019, I think another one of our witnesses, Scott Kornowski, is probably going to address that, is these predatory petition case and the act that was recently. It's the Uniform Petition of Heirs Property Act, long name, to protect heirs in these long-standing family homes. I mean, we are litigating currently a bunch of those cases where basically a predatory tracks down. First of all, they identify the property because there's a tax lien on the property. There's one big red flag and a real problem, and a very unfortunate byproduct of the tax lien sales. So that's number one. Then they track down heirs. They have like a business model. They track down heirs, usually in other states, and say, hey, you got a property up there in New York. We can help you out. Here's a few $1,000s. And they basically pressure these people to sell their fractional shares for pennies on the dollars, then to bring a petition action in court to basically flip the property in a huge profit. Now, luckily, this new law provides at least some protections. Now, with all these advances in legislation, of course, much remains to be done. And one of them, by the way, is to see if finally the CISPA, the Consumer Protection and Small Business Protection Act, can be passed, which would actually strengthen significantly General Business Law 349. in more than one way, and without getting into the details, one is that it would allow for not only deceptive practices, which is always the highest standard, but unfair practices to be prosecuted. And another important thing is that the bill would remove a court-imposed restriction that limits GBL 349 to only those actions that are broadly, consumer-directed with a broad consumer impact. Obviously, that limits a lot of individual unfair and abusive practices. So if this bill was finally passed into law, it would give homeowners another tool to fight theft, certainly not the only one, because there are, of course, other gaps, and I'll only try to highlight a few. One of them is the role of the public notaries. We desperately need law that really puts some kind of restrictions on public notaries, similar to what many other states already have. We now have a remote notarization law, which actually has at least some restrictions. However, the red ink notarization does not. And most of these deed thefts come to some office. You're just signing some application. Don't worry about it. Just sign here, sign there. And as you know, one of the prior witnesses, I believe, testified, often in the presence of a lawyer, which of course gives it a veneer of legitimacy. But here's the public notary who says, well, okay, sign here. They don't ask for identification. There is no written record required. So a person signs because somebody told them, don't worry about it. You don't have to read it, or we're rushed, we're in a hurry. Just sign here, sign here, sign here. This is the story we hear over and over again. Now, of course, having a public notary law that actually would require the creation of a written record would maybe not solve the whole problem, but it would be a contributing factor in mitigating some of these transaction and deed thefts. I think there's one bill pending currently that was introduced by State Senator Lanza. I'm not sure if that's the only bill that's pending, but I just noticed it. And it also requires, that particular bill requires an affirmative statement by the person, by the grantor. In other words, the person that's now being tricked into transferring the title. Hey, I, so-and-so, am authorizing the transfer of my title. Will it solve all the problems? Not, but it is another step. Because half the time, the victims of deed theft sit there and have no clue that they just signed over the deed because they're confronted with a big stack of papers and, flip, 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 sign here, and so, yeah, some of these things would definitely help to curb deed theft. Another issue is that scammers, with great ease, perpetrate their fraudulent acts by putting a cloud on the title. Mm-hmm. And that is another area that needs to be addressed. There's specifically two issues. One is putting a UCC lien on a property without any legal basis whatsoever. We've seen a big example, a horrible example of that with a company called Launch Development and their affiliate Homeowner Assistance, New York. They're still currently in court. The people still don't have their title back. But one of the ways that Launch and this organization, they're called HASNI, Homeowner Assistance Services in New York, operated is by literally putting UCC liens on hundreds, not just dozens, hundreds of property in 3 boroughs. And why did they do that, you wonder? Well, it's putting a cloud on the title, and it disables the homeowner to, in any shape and form, dispose of their property in a legitimate way. It ties up their hands. It ties up the property. So this UCC lien, and the way it works now, and we still see it here and there, is that you can place a UCC lien on a property without actually proving that there is a security agreement that in this case the owner had entered into to allow their home to use as a collateral, for example, for solar panels or whatever. The Secretary of State does not require the filing of these actual security agreements, and that's a big gap. And another gap is, and this we see consistently with these deed theft is that scammers will record a contract of sale. And that makes absolutely no sense. I have never seen a contract of sale being recorded in a legitimate homeowner, sale. The only time we see these contract of sale being recorded always is in connection with the scam, in preparation, again, to tie up the property and make it hard for the homeowner to dispose of their property or take any other options. Because the burden then, once there's this cloud on the title, the burden then shifts to the homeowner to have to litigate this. Now think of that. Now you have to find a lawyer to get rid of this cloud.
Ms. Friedhelm,
I mean,
I'm going to ask you
that's...
to wrap up. We will have an opportunity for panelists to follow up, but could I just, the time is
Yeah, the only other thing is, the laws that deal with basically lenders being good faith purchasers, including their assignees, deserves another look, because ultimately too many lenders finance these fraudulent transactions and later claim, oh, we didn't know anything, we just came to the table to finance a sale. And ditto for the assignee. The trust we have in our case where somebody is being evicted from from a home they've lived in for decades. The assignee, I mean, I won't get into the whole history, but the assignee said, wait, we're just the trust. We have absolutely nothing to do with any of this. No liability, and I think that's something that we should look at. And finally, and I close here, is that, and I think that's been already dramatically testified to today, which is the whole breakdown between civil actions and criminal action. It's one or the other. We often pursue civil action. Yeah, the bad guys are in jail. Does it help us in civil court? Not necessarily, and vice versa. So there have to be more tools to bring the two areas together in a more forceful way. And I just want to finish, first of all, thank you again for allowing us to speak. And secondly, we really look forward to working with the legislator to address any of these gaps and others that I probably didn't identify. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up.
Good morning. My name is Arthur Burkle. I'm a senior staff attorney at the Neighborhood Economic Justice Project at Brooklyn Legal Services, part of Legal Service NYC. I submit this testimony on behalf of Legal Services NYC. Thank you very much to the committee for inviting us to speak on this topic. As you know, for over 50 years, Legal Services NYC has provided critical legal assistance to our most vulnerable residents in our city. We are also the largest and oldest provider of foreclosure prevention legal services in New York, with offices in 4 boroughs, and we've helped prevent foreclosure and keep families in their homes in the thousands. The goal of our work at the NEAJP is to keep homeowners at home. That's it in a nutshell. And we use all the tools at our disposal to strive for and achieve that goal, including complex and affirmative litigation in state and federal court, anti-discriminatory actions with state and federal authorities, policy advocacy, and community education. A large part of our work focuses on preventing foreclosures. Yet assisting victims of deed theft scams and fraudulent deeds scams is a significant, constant, and growing part of our practice. We meet multiple homeowners every year whose homes have been stolen through some type of scam, be it a modification scam, short sale scam, a property tax scam, partition scam, scams involving administration, estate administration, you name it. The sheer number of scams, the number of victims that we see ourselves, and the variety of forms that these scams and frauds take shocks me again and again. The targets of these scams, as you know, are the most vulnerable residents in our city. They tend to be long-term residents in communities that are primarily black and brown neighborhoods, communities that have been victimized by predatory lending, redlining, have experienced large concentrations of foreclosures, and experienced economic disinvestment for decades. These are also the neighborhoods where property values are skyrocketing, where they're going through violent gentrification and displacement. Now, the individual targets for these scammers are the most vulnerable among these communities: seniors, immigrant families, families in financial distress, those with mortgage arrears or property tax arrears, which are public thanks to the yearly lien sale list that is published. These are the communities where fraud is most prevalent, and scammers usually get away with it. Our system is designed to facilitate the transfer of properties, not to protect our most vulnerable residents. Scammers rarely see or face consequences, criminally or civil. with free protections for our residents. The families that these scammers targets, fraud is profitable for them. And as long as conditions remain the same, fraud will remain prevalent and will continue to increase. Now, my testimony today is grounded in the case of a homeowner whose home was taken through a vicious fraud. His family had owned their home in Brownsville for over 60 years, had paid off the mortgage. The family home was a source of emotional and financial stability. It was their home. It was their roots. My client lived in the home since he was 2 years old, his whole life. The home provided financial security as the value increased and the family paid off the mortgage. It also provided a reliable income stream. They had affordable long-term tenants in the property. This was all taken away from my client when several scammers defrauded him of the title of his home. He is now homeless. His family is scattered. He faces impossible odds to recovering the title of his property. He may not get his home back. He will testify today. My client was vulnerable to a gang of deed theft scammers because the property had tax arrears. He didn't know about the legal services network or housing counseling agencies or legitimate funding sources that could have helped him pay off the arrears easily. Instead, he was presented a scheme by a real estate operator to pay off the liens. And I should note that the scammers told him, don't trust anyone else, trust us because we're Jamaican like you. So when we have prejudice, it makes us all more vulnerable, regardless of where that prejudice is directed. That bears repeating. My client transferred, pursuant to this scheme, the property to an LLC. The transfer was in the form of a sale and was memorialized in a contract of sale prepared by an attorney. The attorney was listed as his attorney. The attorney never met with my client, never spoke to him, was not even present at the closing. The contract of sale was accompanied by a reconveyance agreement that said, after a certain amount of time, the LLC will return the property to you. That contract was taken away at the closing. My client never received a copy of it. The proceeds from the mortgage were used in part to pay off the property tax liens. They also, over $150,000 went to pay off the scammers and their fees for their work. For 6 months, my client made mortgage payments, the mortgage payments of the LLC. Then the scammers told him that the lender had rescinded the loan, the transaction had fallen through, and he had lost his property. The very next day, he received an eviction notice from a company he had never heard of before. He was in shock. He didn't know what to do. He first turned to the lawyer in the contract. He directed him to another colleague that he had worked with who started a defective quiet title action. In the complaint, the attorney wrote that the company that was now trying to evict him had no way of knowing of the fraud in the complaint. My client then sought assistance from other private attorneys before he came to us, in vain. He couldn't afford their fees. They told him this is too complex. The legal knots are too tangled. We can't do anything. And this is often the case in the clients that we see, that we meet them when it's too late, when the legal issues are intractable. I have in my docket 4 cases that have been impacted by some kind of fraud. And this client is one that we're trying to assist pro se, but he may not get his property back. Other cases, there is more hope. We found them, they came to us in time. I would now like to turn to some legislative, sorry, Senator.
Mr. Burkle, can I ask you can we cut this off for now? I have a feeling we will have questions, including what legislative solutions would you propose in a few moments, but if we just let Ms. Nicholson speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Yola Nicholson. I'm an attorney in private practice. I see Senator Myrie's big smile. Thank you so much, Senator Myrie, for working with and Senator Kavanaugh. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Chairman Brian Kavanaugh, to Senator Myrie, to Senator Salazar, and the additional members of the committee for addressing deed theft at this public hearing at this time in 2022. Secondly, I'm respectfully requesting that this committee investigate the subject of deed theft, which you've called title fraud, through a broader spectrum of a set of lens that will bring to the fore that the fraudulent conveyance of title of a home or forgery of a deed is actually theft known as the historic crime of thievery. That the deed is merely the instrument through which the perpetrator steals the brick and mortar, value and equity, legacy and promise of an individual's property or a family's home. When the deed is stolen, With that deed goes the family's primary or sole financial investment and asset, along with their memories, place of quiet enjoyment and security. With that deed goes their goodwill in their community, their long-term friendships and familiar relationships with their neighbors. With that deed goes what some would say, most importantly, their intergenerational wealth. And a number of these families, most of these families, are working family, median to middle-income families. The time is here for this committee and the New York State Legislature to address deed and equity theft for the extent of a crime that it is. The Senate's assessment is spot on. Predatory practice of deed theft is now prevalent in gentrifying communities. But let's call a spade a spade. It is ongoing in black communities in Brooklyn. What is going on is not merely stealing of title, but it's the illicit transfer of the monetary value of the equity to private equity investors, fraudsters, masked by limited liability companies and shell corporations, investors who are from outside of the community with the aim of aggressively evicting and displacing black families, utilizing forged and fraudulent deeds, and including brown families, and in some instances, white families. So, Senator Carviner, you're right. There are victims across the board, but the prevalent victims are black families who've struggled hard. As you may recall, I'm submitting my testimony, and I will skip ahead in the interest of time. But when a perpetrator forges a property owner's signature on a deed, or a notary public permits his stamp to be used unlawfully, or a fraudster deceives a property owner into conveying title as part of a scam, this now should be policed and remedied expeditiously. Property ownership to African American families didn't come easy. Property ownership to people of African descent came with few government subsidies, came with very little support, and through the New York State Legislature. And property ownership of black families in Brooklyn and Queens has dropped expeditiously by 50% in the last decade. My co-panelists here are correct. The prior period of predatory subprime lending has resulted in black communities in particular carrying the burden of the foreclosure crisis. But what has happened? We have a court system, OCA, you said, declined your invitation, who refused to really adhere and apply the laws and the intent of the laws that you have. In one instance, I know of a court clerk who refuses or is hesitant to file the notice of rescissions to undo a deed theft on the HEPTA, even though they're required to. So there are so many instances. DA's office will tell you that there's very little they can do because the legislature hasn't given them enough tools. So now is the time for us to look at the tools and take away what appears to all of us to be a cloud of deception for the victims, but a welcome mat for the fraudsters. They can walk into court, get their deed stamped, get a court to give them a judgment and say this is a valid deed, walk down to the Department of Finance, get it recorded, and as my co-panelist said, put a very strong cloud on title. So I'm asking you to rise the level of the crime to that of a felony, to adopt the recommendations in prior Cy-Vance report, because what is being stolen is millions of dollars in equity and future generational wealth. I've, in my testimony, submitted some examples to you of families that I represent. I'm co-founder of the New York State Foreclosure Defense Bar. We are steadfast in our work for median and middle-income families to keep them in their homes and preserve their equity when they can. When they can't, to make sure the process is dignified so that they do not fall down the economic ladder. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you again, Senator Myrie.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Myrie, for being our most popular senator tonight.
Oh, you are as well.
Oh, certainly not. And we've now been joined another addition to this panel, Scott Kowanowski, who is getting settled, who represents the City Bar Justice Program and particularly the homeowner stability operation for purposes today. So thank you.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Scott Kowanowski. I'm an attorney and I direct the Homeowner Stability Project at the City Bar Justice Center. We're the nonprofit civil legal services affiliate of the New York City Bar Association. We provide free legal services to low and moderate income New Yorkers facing threats to home ownership, whether foreclosure or as targets of predatory real estate investment practices and fraud. The City Bar Justice Center operates one of the largest free civil legal services hotlines in New York City, and we operate in all 5 boroughs. We work closely with law enforcement and other legal services providers and housing counseling agencies and participate in the New York City Deed Theft Task Force. We regularly receive referrals from the New York City Sheriff, the various county DAs, the Office of the Attorney General, and our legal services and housing counselor colleagues when a case involves deed theft or some other form of predatory real estate practice. We provide direct representation or place the civil cases with one of our pro bono partners to provide free legal services to thwart these practices. The City Bar Justice Center is on the front lines of combating these practices and see trends as they arise, and we do our best to address them. For example, I recently worked on revising the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act and getting it passed into law as RPAPL 993 when we saw real estate speculators aggressively targeting heir-occupied family homes to appropriate high-valued homes in historically black neighborhoods, reaping huge profits while displacing generations of families of color from their homes and communities. As a preliminary matter, we cannot have a full discussion of deed theft and similar practices in New York City without acknowledging the racial equity implications, as these practices disproportionately target and affect black and other individuals and communities of color. This is partly due to historic racist government policies and regulations that often barred African Americans from securing financing or even purchasing homes in certain communities, as well as access to legal services and estate planning to preserve those homes once they acquire them. The former contributed to concentrations of racial minorities in areas that have now rapidly gentrified, resulting in incredibly valuable homes in neighborhoods like Harlem and Bed-Stuy that are often unmortgaged and ripe for exploitation to tap the significant accumulated intergenerational wealth held in those homes. We see how this plays out in our New York City neighborhoods by the sorts of case referrals and requests for legal services that the City Bar Justice Center receives. Approximately 2/3 of our clients self-identify as Black or African American, a number that far outpaces the 24% of New York City residents of that demographic. What is deed theft? There's no exact definition, but I consider it a wide range of unscrupulous, predatory, deceptive, fraudulent, and outright criminal practices that result in the transfer of title from the target, whether the living person on title or the heirs who acquired their interests in the home by operation of law. One of the top issues we see is the lack of sufficient mechanisms and tools for law enforcement to investigate and prosecute these cases. Much of the predatory activity is not clearly criminal, or it's too difficult to prove. Efforts should be made to clarify and expand the range of criminal activities and penalties that can be triggered by these types of practices. For example, we have seen what appears to be collusive practices among appraisers, real estate brokers, attorneys, and other actors who are participating or facilitating these schemes. Any individual who knowingly participates or makes false or misleading representations to homeowners and their heirs should be considered a part of the problem. Law enforcement should have the tools it needs to fully investigate how these schemes are carried out and by whom. An immediate fix that would reduce some of the predation that we witness is to tighten up the sorts of land documents that can be submitted for recordation. Specifically, recordation of memos of contract and nondescript UCC financing statements on ACRIS, the city's recording system. I've only seen them in the context of unscrupulous investors targeting distressed homeowners. The investors will often arrange for an unrepresented homeowner to sign a memo of contract that is void of any terms of sale, but seemingly obligates the homeowner to some future sale of the home. There is often no underlying contract, and the homeowner is unaware of what they are signing and that it will be recorded. The memo of contract creates a cloud on title, complicating the homeowner's efforts to preserve their home by resolving a mortgage default or tax lien through a loan modification, refinance, or some other means. The investor will often use the memo of contract as leverage to pressure the homeowner to pay to have it canceled, or as an initial means to divest the property from the homeowner. The city register or other local recording officer needs statutory authority to reject the recording of non-conveyance real property interests such as these executory contracts. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So I have a few questions, and I imagine my colleagues will as well. But let me just begin. Mr. Burkle, we've heard extensive testimony from a few about legislative solutions. Mr. Burkle, can you talk about what you think, what legislative solutions you would support?
Thank you, Senator. What's so painful about my client's experience and the other victims of deed theft scams that we meet is that had they found a legitimate attorney at any time during the lifetime of their case, they would never have lost their home. Funding of the HOP program, the Homeownership Protection Program, is a crucial tool to preserving homeownership in Black and brown communities. Every year, that funding is in jeopardy. It should be a permanent part of the budget, and it should be increased with a dedicated source of funds for cases where the recovery of the title is remote, because we also, as legal services providers, have to make difficult decisions, and we can't invest all our resources in cases where we see no certain recovery for the client. As has already been said today, another important tool would be the amendment of GBL 349, the Consumer Small Business Protection Act, CSPA, which would add abusive and unfair practices as prohibited conduct. In many of these cases, and cases that I see, the homeowners are aware that they're entering into a deal. Later on, their home is gone, their title is gone. The district attorney will say, this is a bad deal. It's not a criminal act. But the CSPA would add a powerful tool for these homeowners to bring additional claims, and it could have made a difference in my client's case. Ms. Friedheim alluded to this, that the current framework of property transfers is such that a scammer down the chain of title can disclaim knowledge of the fraud and qualify as a bona fide purchaser, and that was present in my client's case. It creates a disincentive to really look at the property status. An investor that is acquiring a property for investment purposes, or someone who is acquiring a property to live in it, it's not reasonable to believe that they would just look at the chain of title, not visit the property, not see who's living there. Those kinds of things would really create a constructive notice. And that was already in a proposed legislation in the 2019-2020 legislative session in the amendment of Real Property Law 266. Creating a requirement or creating a mechanism where constructive notice would strip the investor or the purchaser of bona fide purchaser status is only reasonable. It would be such a powerful tool. It would have made a difference in my client's case. It's been mentioned before, the Home Equity Theft Protection Act is a very powerful tool. It allows for rescission of a transaction within 2 years, but it's very limited. It only applies to distressed homeowners with mortgage arrears. Why not homeowners with property tax arrears, which are public, thanks again to the public lien sale list? In my client's case, he would not be eligible for the benefits of this statute because he didn't have a mortgage. His family had paid that off over the 60 years that they owned it, but they had $40,000 in property tax arrears. But he could not rescind this transaction under the law. So that law could be amended. These are some of the powerful tools that homeowners would see make a difference in their cases. Thank you for your time and for this hearing.
Thank you. And I just have another minute left. I actually want to direct this to Mr. Kowanowski. So you work at the City Bar Association representing attorneys. I'm an attorney. I still pay that exorbitant fee every other year, even though I don't practice, but somehow it seems not worth giving up. But just a lot of the testimony today has been about attorneys participating in transactions that seem on their face to be questionable. Is there and we've said we haven't heard from the Office of Court Administration today, but is there a role to play in additional scrutiny of the adherence to the ethical standards of the profession of attorneys in these cases?
I mean, there is, and just to be clear, New York City Bar Association, we don't investigate those grievance complaints. Oh yeah.
As an organization of, by, and for attorneys, I thought you might have a perspective.
Yeah, and it also puts us in an odd position because we represent, a lot of those attorneys are members of our organization. But but my organization, we're actually an affiliate of the New York City Bar Association, so we're not directly related to that membership. But what I do in my cases is right now I'm just filing grievance complaints or helping homeowners who have been affected by attorney malfeasance, filing those grievance complaints. I'm just a civil lawyer, so I don't do anything on the criminal side, and I don't really understand criminal law very well. But we have a lot of tools. In fact, I just filed a brief last week that we just named a whole bunch of different actors, including the attorneys, and we're just going after gross negligence in the representation of these homeowners. And it was a really particularly bad case because it was two senior brothers who inherited their parents' home, and it was straight up fraud. Somebody came in and posed as the two brothers. One of them is completely incapacitated in the hospital and has no ability to sign anything, and just represented to their own attorneys, to the brokers, to the title company, everybody that they were these individuals, and they weren't. And just a little bit of due diligence by any of those actors would have uncovered that fraud. And so now we have to sue all of these individual actors. But we referred that case, or actually the Queens DA had referred that case to us to investigate, and they had done their own investigation, and they just didn't have the resources to, or not just the resources, but the tools to go after what was clearly fraud. So they're waiting for us to build out our civil case before they can build out their criminal case, because we have a lot more leeway in the civil world for doing discovery and that sort of thing.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, if you could, the time for my question is up, but if you could give us a quick answer, and then I want to get my colleagues.
No, I just wanted to really add what Scott just laid out, but it's been extremely frustrating to observe the role of lawyers in this, and actually the lack of consequences for these lawyers. Because what happens is virtually all of our DTF cases that we've been litigating, one of the defendants would be a lawyer. Now, what happens is you can't call the grievance committee when you're in the middle of litigation. They won't touch it. And in fact, I found personally the grievance committee, not all, I'm talking about the state, not very effective in really going after lawyers that are committing deed theft or participating or colluding in. And it seems a major concern for the grievance committee is more, the handling of the IOLA account and things like that, And it's so frustrating because, yes, so many attorneys, and it is very sad to see people that go to law school and supposedly try to adhere to some ethics actually perpetrating fraud, because it is the lawyer who sits at the table and says, I've had a client, and I remember so well her story. It was so sad. She was sitting there, and she says, so-and-so, the lawyer sitting right next to me, was whispering in my ear, just sign, don't worry, I've read it all, don't worry about it. In fact, there are the very important enablers, and that is definitely another area to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Myrie.
Thank you. Thank you for the applause. I hadn't spoken yet. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Being Senator Myrie.
Just kidding. So thank you all for your testimony. Thank you, Ms. Nicholson, for the framing on the history, the implications of gentrification, redlining, the legacy implications of this type of theft. And Senator Kavanaugh actually asked something that I was planning to ask about the lawyers. I, too, am an attorney. I don't understand how anyone who's gone through the process that we've had to go through could, in good conscience, conduct themselves the way that they have. However, they are not acting alone. And they are acting in concert, as has been mentioned, with a bunch of people in this system. And forgive me for posing this question to you. I'd be posing it to the Office of Court Administration if they showed up. How is it that a court system can know of a problem? I think Ms. Freidheim, you said you've been working on this since 2000. How is it that the court system can know of a problem, know that there are lawyers behaving badly, know that certain public administrator offices that have been investigated and audited by the controller's office to change their practices, how we can read the newspaper articles, how we can see the families evicted on the streets, homelessness going up, black home ownership almost eviscerated over this past decade, if you look at the new census numbers. How is it that the court can know all of this and still look the other way?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please, Ms.
Would you like me to be honest?
Yes, please.
You know, I'm an attorney. I take my license and my practice seriously, and I take this work seriously. I consider myself a civil rights attorney, and it pains me every day to look at what's happening in the court system. We have a court administration that, you know, Senator Kavanaugh, the flip of that is, I will say that they're biased. They believe that black families, black homeowners who have been in court, and some judges have said it, they're deadbeats. They shouldn't have been in the mortgage in the first place. And from our appellate courts down, they've made it clear that defrauding someone who looks like me or Senator Myrie or Senator Salazar is not actionable in the court. And that their job is to move these cases to judgment and auction for the private investors. That is, you know, I think I just, did you say it's true, Oda? Thank you for, because I'm going out on a limb here. So I think that sometimes I say that you have entrusted the court with saving the precious asset that is home ownership. The HEPTA law, the 2008 home prevention law, and the court finds every single way to circumvent it, to say that standing, who owns the note, is not essential. And what it does is to say that they're not going to look at a forged deed. So what it does is it creates a cloud of accommodation for the fraudster. It puts a burden and a cost on the victim who's usually berated in the court, embarrassed, made to feel bad for falling behind in their mortgage. So it's a long way to answer your question, but I think if we look at solutions, I think entrusting the protection of homes, especially black family homes, should be removed from the authority and jurisdiction of the Office of Court Administration. Because we lost, I understand, close to 8,500 properties, I think primarily residential in Brooklyn between 2013 and 2019. The court administrators are bragging about this when there were laws in place to protect home ownership, facilitate modifications, prevent fraud. And so I hope I've answered your question, but they have no interest in advancing your intent.
Thank you.
I'll just ask a follow-up to that. So, removing the courts are, the standard way that we adjudicate these disputes across all of our society. I mean, if we wanted to remove courts from these processes, I guess which processes would you remove them from, and how would we adjudicate disputes where somebody's right to their home is on the line?
Well, some of my colleagues disagree with me on this. I'm not saying remove courts, but you may not have realized that about 6 years ago, the Office of Court Administration decided to remove foreclosure cases, for example, from the independent assignment system. So what that has done is taken away the thousands of foreclosure cases, which make up a third of the state docket, from the elected judges, the well-meaning judges, we have no jurisprudence anymore in this area. So just as how sometimes special courts are created, and because, again, this is such an important, not just a property right issue, but I think a public health issue, I think that it has come to the fore that we have high homeless rates, children of working families. When we lose a home in the city, we lose the tenants who were there, we lose the affordable rentals, And the homes are predominantly going to equity investors who are turning them into unaffordable. Scott, you're shaking your head, so I'm not making this up, right? And so we have a crisis that and the court administration has discouraged extensive loan modification, makes it difficult for people to assert their rights. The appellate courts have lowered the standards, which I think violate the 14th Amendment. And so we have the most wonderful laws on the books. We do need more criminal penal code laws for the DAs and the AG's office to sanction deed and equity theft. But we can't keep asking you to do laws. You do the laws. And we have a court system that says we don't really quite care about them.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to end there. Thank you to this panel. Very informative and mutually supportive panel. That was good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to circle back. I think Michael Baker and Samuel Troutman are here now. They are both directly impacted individuals. Thanks very much. Okay, so again, we have 5 minutes for testimony, and then any questions or discussion for the panel will be after that. If you could just begin by stating your name so the person recording.
I thought it was 10.
Okay, I'm sorry. We
No, 10 for the government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I misread it then.
Okay, it's 5. Yeah, we've been doing 5 today for folks, but again, there'll be opportunity to have.
My name is Michael Baker.
Right.
I live in Brooklyn, New York, 435 Herzl Street, from 1963. My moms and pops bought that house. They passed away 2014. My mom's passed 2010, 2014. I did the probate for the property because I couldn't afford a lawyer, and the prices that they was telling me was ridiculous. So I couldn't afford it. So did some research to find out how I could do it on my own. So I did the probate on my own, but then finding out that there was taxes and water liens on the property. Mind you, the property is paid off for, all right? Went to some friends, took me to some people because I couldn't get a loan because I wasn't working, credit score, blase, blase. Took it to some people, saying that the only way I could get the money was to sign over my deed. Sign over my deed in the intention of getting a loan for some money to pay off the water taxes, pay off the lien, and repair the house. So all the funds that I got went to that, repair the house. Then all of a sudden now they're telling me that the lenders reneged on the loan. Then they kicked me out of my house. So now I feel bad in a way because it looked like I paid these guys because I had to pay them to use their credit in order to, get. So now I put all the money in the house and they kicked me out of the house with no money. So now I'm homeless with nobody to answer to, nowhere to go. My son, it was me and my son and my nieces was in the property. Now, they telling me, the court said that the reason why they awarded the property to the people that bought it was because it was an innocent purchase. But how could it be an innocent purchase when I'm living in the property? I'm in the property. So they saying that the law says that there's no way for them to, they don't need to know who's in the property, they don't need to know nothing like that, and they shift my whole case and threw me out. So now, what happens to all the equity that my mom's had in that house from 1963 to now, which we never borrowed no money from? And now I'm out in the street, and I have no property. And nobody can answer to me, nobody can say nothing. So now, my question is, why am I voting for these politicians? What is my vote doing? There's no one to help me. I'm out in the streets, sleeping in the park, getting sleep for a property that is over 1.4 million. And I only borrowed 400,000. Where's the rest of my money that was owed to me? Now, I know contractor deals, if they said that they gave me $700,000 and I only got $400,000, that contract is null and void because whatever's on that contract was not proceed or given to me. Now, I got to go through the courts, the judges. So how I feel, this whole thing is a setup. Systematically set up for us to not have no generational wealth. Because if my mom's owned that house from 1963, and you even to say even if I made a mistake, the courts is supposed to investigate that case to all the way to the max. It looked like they either skimmed over it or overlooked all the facts in the case. Because if they didn't give me enough money, they should have did discoveries to even go into the bank accounts to see where these monies went. But nobody did anything. And now I'm homeless, and now I have to come here to testify. And what is that going to do for me? At the end of the day, I'm still homeless. So now, I think that the system needs to be changed. Because if somebody has a property, right, and it's valued at a certain amount of value, and they even don't have a credit score enough, the property's enough for them to even get a loan. But the system is derailed to give these properties to either these private investors that's buying up all the properties, or whether they're selling it back. Because take a look. Why would I have a property from 1963 and now in 2022 sell it with the real estate prices going on in New York City? And then for the simple fact that the property, all the money went back into the property, you could tell that. Why would I sell my property, right, and put the money back into the property? Nobody does that. And even if I did that, they would have to give me permission to renovate the place. I couldn't just sold the place to somebody and then just go in and renovate it without their permission. So I don't understand what's going on in the court system. To me, it feels like the judges and all of them is involved with this. Because if you're talking about $1 million property where they only got it for $400,000, that's a lot of money. Plus the equity. We're not even talking about the equity in the building. So that's a lot of bread to shake around. And if it's not only done to me, I'm finding out it's done to a lot of people, that money accumulates to be a lot of money. And temptation, don't tell me that, oh, no, judge is not going to do it. Temptation is there for everybody. And who can go against them temptations not to take that money? Everybody gets a cut. And now I'm out on the street. And they go home every night to their bed. And I got to wonder where I'm going to sleep. And when I leave here today, I'm still in that same position. So I just came here to say this so that a next family don't get into the position that I'm in. You need to change this. This needs to change now. I don't know if you need to talk to the president. Whatever y'all got to do something. You know what I mean? Because my mom's just turning in her grave. I lose the property for so many years that they could have sold on their own. There's a reason why they didn't sell it. Because they wanted us to have it. And now they took it away.
So thank you, Mr. Baker. We're going to have Mr. Troutman and then any comments or questions from the panel. Mr. Troutman?
Oh, yes. My name is Samuel Troutman. I reside at 420 Bainbridge Street. My sister died first, and my brother-in-law died after she died. And from 2012, I've been paying all of the bills, including water, sewage, property taxes, until I was no longer sent any statements out. I went back to surrogate court to find out why I wasn't receiving any more taxes or anything representing the property, the insurance I was paying. And I found out one day I was trying to become the administrator of the property, but I was never offered. The previous administrator had passed away. When I asked to become the administrator, I was never given an answer. They said, only thing they ever said to me was that I'm only the brother-in-law and not the brother. But there were other people who have been appointed by the courts to be the administrator, and I tried to find out from surrogate why couldn't I become the administrator, but I was never given an answer to that. And then I find out that the property was supposed to have been sold to one somebody. I started getting letters, and then it ended up going to another person who's supposed to have been the next buyer, and I'm left in the cold, more or less, because I don't know what's going on with the property.
Let me chime in, Grandpa. I'm going to chime in on behalf of my grandfather because we live together. I'm his granddaughter, 22. Some random person, Damani Troutman. Some random person one day, a guy, unannouncedly just came to our doorstep, knocked on our home, and he gave us a card, like a envelope that was ripped and written on it, "Oh, this is my home. We purchased this home and on etc. date, and y'all have to leave this home soon because I have my inspectors coming."
Oh, please. Please.
And I'm like, it was just so, it seemed so unprofessional. It seemed he seemed very scandalous. And like my grandfather, he's 81 years old. He took care of the house. I'm talking insulating the walls, gutting it out, insulating it, making sure everything is great.
He pays the bills, right?
Pays the bills?
That's right. He pays the bills. Get it together, sweetheart. Don't cry. Don't get it together. Don't cry. Don't cry. Go ahead and tell
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Breathe. Yeah, tell the story. Tell the story. All right.
Thank you.
Tell the story.
My grandfather took care of the house for so many years by himself. And for some people just to say they up and bought a house, when I seen him grind and made $10,000 to back pay taxes by himself, and he still works.
The first tax payment I made on the property was
Take your time.
the first payment I made was $10,000 tax. And every 3 to 4 months I was paying over $2,000 in taxes. Over $1,100 in insurance, and all of the other house bills. And my brother-in-law is gone, and my sister is going, and I'm running out of steam. I need a place to live, and this is what I thought I had secured. But the harder you go, the harder you have to. I don't mind. I have children who need to grow up and have things themselves. So I'm here, I'm the oldest, and I want them to be able to survive in life. I'm supposed to be able to support my family. And the only way that I find that I can do these things is by getting a chance to do it.
That's right.
And if I don't have a place, I can't do it.
Don't take your time, Pop.
Thank you, Grandpa.
I can't do what I need to do. I got no help from surrogate court. And I got no help when people can just walk up and put a part of a manila envelope on my door and say, I'm the new owner. He said that I need to get downstairs so I can check the meters. I'm going to change the lock. You don't know the person. There's no proper identification on another envelope other than he wrote down the phone number and some other literature that doesn't mean anything as far as the court is concerned. At least I was that smart.
Who was the judge, Pop? Who was the judge in the surrogate court? Who was the judge?
Another person just
You don't know
walked
the
up.
judge that was in
Oh, I have it written on paper what he left with me. It's hard enough in life to stay out of jail, feed your family, keep a job, keep clothes on your back, and then people at will just come and say, you don't even got nothing. This belongs to me. And they can feel down and out. But you keep looking, and try and hold your head up and respect the people that surround you. And if life is going to continue to be so hard just to live, what good is it? We're there.
And I just want to add, like, we live in Bed-Stuy, and I love my block. Like, my maternal grandfather and my grandfather, like my parents grew up neighbors, they was kids. It's a lot of like family chemistry on the block, and just the atmosphere. That's somewhere I want my kids to grow up in, their kids to grow up in. Like, it's like we belong there. Like our ancestors, my great aunts and everything, they worked hard. They didn't just get what they had off the strength of just, you know, they worked and they worked very hard. And I appreciate the opportunity I gave me and my grandfather, and thank y'all for your support.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna.
I need support.
Thank you all for your testimony, and just to say thank you for bringing into this room, the reasons that we're here, the reasons that we're focused on really addressing this problem. And I know I speak for my colleagues in saying we are here to find solutions and to do everything possible to address this. And I think Senator Myrie has some comments.
Firstly, to Mr. Baker, my hope is that before you leave, that you can speak to the members of our staffs, our respective staffs, so that we can deal with the immediate issue of you and your children and their housing. It is enraging that anyone should have to come and testify before us in the way that you've had to.
Could I say something? This whole thing seems it's not humanitarian.
It's inhumane.
It's inhumane. That's the word I was trying to find.
That's right.
It's inhumane to know that people have their properties and losing them because people is trying to be lucrative and making money.
So I'll just,
And then the courts, they know. They know. It's not like they don't know. But the problem is everybody don't know about everybody's case. So these cases go through so fast and so quickly that by the time everything is happening, nobody knows nothing. And the person that's the victim, they're so overwhelmed with everything that's going on that they just give up. You heard he said it? He said he's running out of steam. But he can't give up.
That's right, Mr. Baker. I'm sorry. I just want to. I don't want to get my time crunched here. But you're exactly right. And because it's so fact dependent on each case, and though we see similarities, part of the reason we're holding this hearing is we need a system-wide response to this because of how systemic the destruction has been. And what I was trying to say earlier before getting snotty-nosed was you shouldn't have to testify like this, but because of this testimony, you're going to reach people that would not have been reached. People who don't know that this is happening, people who think that we're just making this up, people who think that this happens in one corner or that this is siloed to some particular. This is a system-wide decimation of our families. And it requires a system-wide response. And so I'm grateful again to my colleagues for allowing for us to do this and to hear directly from you. And we have a lot of work to do. You mentioned something at the top. You said, well, why are we voting for people that aren't going to do the thing, right? You're right.
Because I want to know.
We have a role to play, and you elect us to write the laws and to pass the laws. And from what we're hearing today, from what we've heard from our government agencies, the testimony that we've received, we're going to act. And I just want to say thank you, because it's not going to be because, you know, we're eloquent speaking or someone likes the way we say something, or because it's not going to be, that's not what's going to be the source of the change. It's going to be because of you, Mr. Troutman, you, Mr. Big, and Damani. I'm sorry, Damani. It's going to be because of you that we make the difference. So I just want to again say thank you.
I just want to say thank you for caring. Like, we need people that really have compassionate hearts to be at the stand. So it's not embarrassing to have snotty nose. That's just letting us know that you care, and we appreciate that, and all of y'all.
Thank you. Okay, again, take the opportunity to thank this panel again, and we'll be in touch. So we're going to combine, for those who are following the schedule, some folks who are going to be on panel F and panel G, I believe all of whom are here. And these are all these are community-based organizations and legal service providers. But I'm going to ask Lucy Block and Kevin Wolf and Lisa Milas and Subhana Rahim all to come up if you're here.
So we can
Yeah, just this one's expected at 1:30. I'm not sure. We have 3 other witnesses who haven't appeared, but should be one. Okay, so thank you all for accommodating a bit of adjustment in the schedule. And if each of you, just before you testify, could state your name and your affiliation for the transcription, that would be appreciated. So again, we're going to do 5 minutes each, and then questions and discussions for the entire panel from the senators. So I don't know if anybody wants to go first, or the first on my list is Lucy Block, or do you? But if you have a different order you prefer, that's fine.
That's fine by me. Lucy Block. I'm with the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, ANHG. It's also been a few years since I've testified, and definitely not in person, so I'm a little rusty. Thanks for understanding. So, it's a little hard to follow those stories, and I think we're all feeling it a little bit. I just want to talk a little bit about how I and we at the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development and our members see these issues in addition to the outright fraud and scamming and theft of property. This is part of larger problems, and this is part of systems that have been set up over decades and centuries in this country. So the landscape in which mostly Black and brown homeowners are being scammed and robbed of their personal property is one in which they, for decades, have mostly not had access to the necessary financial tools, appropriate loans and financing, purely being able to purchase a home where they would like to purchase a home, being able to refinance their homes, being able to pay equitable or fair taxes. There's just a barrage of systems in place, like those decades and centuries of exclusion from wealth building and being able to purchase a home, combined with more recent factors like the foreclosure crisis, everything that has hit homeowners of color harder than white homeowners. This is where we see issues like deed theft and scams playing out. And so all of these are interconnected, and we have to think about the history of disinvestment in these neighborhoods, like Bedford-Stuyvesant, East New York, Southeast Queens, and neighborhoods that were redlined starting as early as a century ago or more, that have set the stage for predatory actors, ranging from people who steal property to people who are considered to be legal, just like pure businesses, people trying to make money off of real estate, who see opportunity. So some of the mechanisms for people to rob others of their homes, and I don't mean like legally on the books rob them, but to take their homes out from under them, are legalized. And so this all needs to be addressed together, right? Black and brown homeowners, immigrant homeowners, they need access to the financial tools. They need assistance if they're behind on taxes or utility payments. If someone is $2,000 behind on utility payments, they shouldn't end up on a tax lien, or on their taxes, they shouldn't end up on a tax lien sale. There shouldn't be a foreclosure filing in which those filings are public. So I have some data that I can share on foreclosure filings in the last few years, and some of it is available because of all of your support with the Displacement Alert Project that we're able to pull those numbers, so thank you for that. And once if there's a foreclosure filing, these actors know that that person is underwater, the person is vulnerable, they can, just like all scams, they can take advantage of the emotional distress that someone is under, and they can say, I can help you get out from under this debt, I can get access, I can fix this foreclosure for you, when really they're gonna take their deed out from under them, or they're gonna pay them, pennies on the dollar of what that home is worth in order to take. So that's what I mean by like a variety of legal to illegal means to get these houses out from under people. And so I worked at, I have a little bit of time. I worked at Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation in 2016 to 17, and one of the main issues at the time was the rampant house flipping in East New York, and that started as early as the 2014 rezoning announcement. ANHG recently held an event in East New York hosted by the East New York CLT with lifelong residents of the neighborhood who took us around and showed us how the house flipping is still happening, the exact same thing. They're working on a community land trust so that they can keep that land affordable and stop that from happening. But these issues have been going on for years. COVID only made it worse. We need to address the foreclosure crisis, and some of the policy recommendations that I'm bringing come largely from our members and the Coalition for Affordable Homes, and our members like Cypress Hills LDC and the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, who have been fighting for years to create cease and desist zones in those neighborhoods, to pass a flip tax to disincentivize the speculation, and really importantly, fully funding HOP, the Homeowner Protection Program. It was funded, I think, at about half of what the need is this past year. And so one of the absolute most important measures to make sure that homeowners are receiving the information they need to steer clear of these types of scams and get that support they need is to fully fund that program so that providers can make that information available and assist them. And then we need to make sure that homeowners are not losing their homes because they're a few $1,000s behind on some payment. We need to make sure that taxes are not robbing them of their homes. Like there are many things that the state and the city need to do to make sure that that's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson of the committee, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on deed theft. I'm here with my client, Jillian Sumter, and she would also like to speak to the committee. My name is Subhana Rahim, and I'm an attorney in private practice. For the past 10 years, my practice has been mostly focused on real estate. About 7 years ago, several clients approached me who lost their homes to deed theft. I will share several stories that include the same culprit, Robert Thomas, because Mr. Thomas has been able to use our courts to sanitize his misdeeds. One person came to me, and when I looked at the fact pattern, I knew that there had to be more because it seemed too incredible that he would just stop at this one case. And I found 5 more. I found 6 cases that went through our Supreme Court that included Robert Thomas with the same similar fact pattern that I will share with you. 4 of them settled, or Robert Thomas dropped the case because he was losing, and so there was no judgment against him for fraud, which is an issue. 2 of them he won, and these are very highly valued properties, corner properties in Bed-Stuy. He won them, and right now those houses are in his name. The first is the Gray property. In 1997, Thomas entered into a valid 5-year lease with the Gray family. The lease had no option to buy. In 2008, Thomas filed a Supreme Court case against Rita Gray to enforce a 20-year lease with an option to buy that included a provision that all the rents previously paid over that 20-year period would be used for the purchase price. Rita Gray was shocked because she had signed a 5-year lease with no option to buy. At a hearing in 2012, the Supreme Court dismissed Thomas's case. Thomas appealed, and the appellate division reversed the decision and gave Thomas the property. It sounds incredible, but it's true. Rita Gray maintains that her family signed a 5-year lease, and because she found out about those other properties, she sought before the Supreme Court to reopen her case and present these other cases of fraud. The Supreme Court denied that case and now is on appeal. We're waiting for oral argument. One of the cases that we found that was very similar to the Rita Gray case was the Chowdhury property. It's a similar fact pattern. It's a property on Bushwick Avenue. In this case, when Chowdhury bought the property, Mr. Thomas was an existing tenant. At the closing, the seller gave Chowdhury the lease that he had with Mr. Thomas. It was 5 years. It had no option to buy. At the end of the 5-year period, Chowdhury sought to evict Thomas in landlord-tenant court. Thomas presented the landlord-tenant court with a 10-year lease with an option to buy. In all, Thomas presented 10 different leases to the same L&T court, and Mr. Chowdhury was not able to evict him in landlord-tenant court. With this option to buy, in 2015, Mr. Thomas filed a Supreme Court case to enforce his option to buy on this fabricated option. One version of the many leases from 1996 had an option to buy a tax lot 42, which did not exist until 2005. Ultimately, Thomas lost the case in Supreme Court because he presented too many 1996 leases, and he also presented a lease with an option to buy a tax lot that did not even exist in 1996 because the New York City DOB did not create tax lot 42 until 2005. That's why he lost that case. The next two cases that I'll talk about include a notary public. In the Fans property, Thomas presented a contract to sell to Mr. Fans to agree to buy his property. It was notarized by Zenaida Johnson. The Tucci property, in this case, Mr. Tucci signed a 1-page lease. Thomas added a second page with an addendum that had an option to buy. In both cases, fortunately, Ms. Johnson was available, and she testified under oath that she did not notarize the documents, that was not her notary stamp, it was not her signature. Pardon me, it was her stamp, but she lost her stamp, and the expiration date was wrong. She never met Mr. Thomas, and she never met Mr. Fans. Thomas lost both cases. In conclusion, Ms. Gray must get her property back, and the other people must get their property back too. There are many cases, these are one of the many cases that I have heard. I have documents to substantiate them, but I think it's important that people win their cases because we have a well-sourced and well-funded court and not an overwhelmed court, and they're not winning because a property, because a notary public is found and gives testimony, and because a person is so emboldened with his fraud that he actually creates, you know, his right to something that doesn't even exist. That shouldn't be the reason why we lost. We win, pardon me. And in that case where he actually does win, there are more. Because of this, I looked up Robert Thomas on Acris. He's owned 16 properties in New York City. And I wonder, of those properties, which ones did he actually fairly purchase and which one did he steal from people by creating these options to buy? I have documents to substantiate these stories, and I'm available to give them to you if you like, and to help with options that I think that may help us get past this.
Thank you. Okay. So we may follow up. And I think you're not on our witness list, so if you could identify yourself and just give us.
My name is Jillian Sumter. I currently live in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. I've been living there for quite a while. My dad purchased the home shortly after adopting my 2 little brothers, so he just wanted to build that generational family wealth. And basically, his goal was to my little brothers, if your wife kicks you out, you have a home. I want to thank you for the opportunity to give my testimony on the hearing for deed theft. I am an actual victim. I can give you firsthand what it means to be for homeowners to be victims of deed theft, and the overwhelming feeling of loss, despair, fear, shame, loneliness, and embarrassment. My father and mother purchased our home in Bed-Stuy with the desire to build that wealth for our family. During that time, approximately, my father passed away approximately 5 years after. He was a heart transplant recipient, and they don't give them much after that. During this, my mother was in an emotionally and financially vulnerable state in her life. My mother was approached by these thieves with a promise to fix her credit and lower her monthly payment and so forth. At this juncture in her life, she's a widowed mother on a fixed income. This particular gang of thieves were actually in the news for doing this not to only my mother's property, but to other properties throughout Brooklyn and Queens. According to the charges, the scammers concealed the true natures of their actions from their clients and distributed fraudulently obtained loan proceeds to themselves, other defendants, and entities. They were also charged with fraudulently preparing documents. The Queens District Attorney, Richard Brown, brought charges to 17 individuals in 2010. I personally assisted in this case, working closely with the investigators. But with this fight ending, another was just boiling under the surface with a Fidelity National Law Group. They represent the now defunct bank, also the title insurance company. The FDIC issued a cease and desist order against Fremont in March of 2007, alleging that Fremont was operating without effective risk management policies and without adequate loan underwriting criteria. The Massachusetts Attorney General filed a lawsuit against Fremont in October of 2007. In 2008, Massachusetts managed to get an injunction against Fremont Investment and Loan from foreclosing on properties in Massachusetts. The Center for Public Integrity listed Fremont as one of the top 10 companies most responsible for the U.S. financial meltdown. The issue is, where does this leave the victims and the properties they defrauded? Returning deeds to owners does not stop the banks and the title insurance companies from pursuing the victims or putting astronomical liens on these properties. I say this from personal experience in an ongoing case in Brooklyn Supreme Court with Fidelity National Law Group, representing a now defunct bank, which was known as the biggest subprime mortgage lenders and allowed and processed the actual fraudulent loan the scammer took on my mother's property. My family and I have been fighting for over 10 years to stop the foreclosure on my mother's property. I've reached out to numerous city and state agencies regarding the issue. I've approached countless organizations and law enforcement agencies, but no one has been willing to or capable to take up this complex case. This is what happens to people who are actual victims in the property. I've read numerous cases in the housing court where even though the homeowner is the victim, they lose the property by foreclosure. This is the scariest part. We, the victims, we are left to clean up this mess alone. How is it remotely possible to be a victim again, but this time by our local government? We have no protection, no defense against the judges who rule in favor of banks and title companies. I cannot afford an attorney to fight the companies that have a team of lawyers that are literally dedicated to make us deed victims, victims again.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was quite moving. Just apologize. Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Milas, and I'm a staff attorney and anchor program manager for the Homeowner Protection Program at Empire Justice Center. Thank you to the committee for holding this hearing today on the important issue of deed theft. Empire Justice Center is a statewide legal services organization. We undertake policy research and analysis and engage in legislative and administrative advocacy. We also represent low-income individuals as well as classes of New Yorkers in a wide range of poverty law issues, including consumer law and mortgage foreclosure defense. Empire Justice Center is one of 2 anchor partners contracted by the New York State Office of the Attorney General to provide oversight and technical assistance to grantees under the Homeowner Protection Program. The Center for New York City Neighborhoods is our co-anchor partner under HOP. Empire Justice Center oversees 60 non-for-profit housing, counseling, and legal services programs outside New York City. Through our work outside New York City, we regularly hear from advocates about scammers who target homeowners on a daily basis, looking to profit off of vulnerable homeowners in desperate situations. One of our roles is to facilitate calls statewide, and in particular, we hold a call with Long Island advocates, both housing counselors and legal services advocates, and deed theft is continually discussed, as is the cases that our advocates on Long Island face. We also circulate names during those calls of partnerships or LLCs or individuals who are bad actors, so that the folks, our advocates on the ground, have those names to circulate and be wary of. HOP advocates who are on the ground are the first line of defense in identifying scams and providing information to the Office of the Attorney General through its Protect Our Homes campaign, which was developed in partnership with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. We regularly feed information through this campaign to the Office of the Attorney General so that it can track, investigate, and prosecute bad actors. But for the HOP network, thousands more homeowners would turn to these scammers for assistance, and millions of equity that should remain in the hands of New York homeowners would be lost. We are incredibly proud of the resources available to New York homeowners, but it's going to take the continued effort of all of us to prevent deed theft. So we've respectfully submitted a number of recommendations which are in our written materials, and for purposes of time, I'm just going to highlight 2 of those recommendations for the committee today. Our first recommendation to the committee is to ensure that funding is continued for HOP in next year's budget and to stabilize funding for HOP in future years. The best way for homeowners to avoid scams is to get connected with a HOP advocate immediately. One of the greatest successes of the HOP network is that we prevent homeowners from falling prey to scammers. Our second recommendation to combat deed theft and other homeowner-related scams in New York State is to pass the Consumer and Small Business Protection Act, CISPA, early in the next legislative session. It's striking that our most basic and overarching consumer protection law, GBL Section 349, is among the very weakest in the nation. It only prohibits deceptive acts and practices. CISPA would bring New York State in line with the vast majority of other states in the country to add prohibitions against unfair practices as well as abusive practices. CISPA also improves the deceptive prong, which has been limited judicially to apply only to conduct that's intended to deceive more than one individual. CISPA also increases the very outdated damage awards and mandates awards of attorney's fees and costs to a prevailing plaintiff. Deed theft scams are a prime example for why New York State needs to pass the Consumer and Small Business Protection Act. Just legislating scam by scam, it's kind of like that carnival game, whack-a-mole. You're always, behind the 8 ball. But CISPA will provide critical protection for consumers against ever-evolving deed theft practices. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide testimony at this hearing.
So I'm going to ask if my colleagues have any questions, but just to, just add my thanks to, to all of you for testifying today, and just in particular, Empire Justice and ANHD, who really have been very critical resources, both for people in our communities throughout the state, but also for coming up with policy solutions that really will address this. I will note, since the HOP program has been mentioned a few times, and the need to protect it, that each year I've been the chair of this committee. It's been a huge fight, particularly with the governor's office, to get them to fund that program. I will note that 2022 was the first time in my memory that the governor began the budget process by putting money into the executive budget to fund that. In other years, it was late March before we had any assurance that there'd be any money at all. So I think, we do have a governor who has been supportive of that, and we're hoping to have a very positive outcome again in this year's budget on that program. I'll let any questions or Senator Salazar.
Sure. See if great. So this question is particularly for Lucy, but certainly welcome anyone else to respond to it, regarding the cease and desist zone that was created in what's basically Brooklyn Community Board 5 a couple of years ago. Do you have thoughts on the enforcement of the zone thus far by the Department of State? I know it's only been a couple of years, so maybe that's difficult to assess. But if you do have any thoughts on it, or even what even if it's anecdotal, from people who live from homeowners in the community who have had to deal with harassment.
I can't speak to the enforcement of that cease and desist zone in particular, but I'd be happy. I mean, I'm sure you're in touch with with Cypress Hills, and I would reach out to them, and also to members of the East New York CLT, like Al Scott and Deborah Ack, to ask them how if the enforcement has been adequate.
Thanks.
Okay. Again, thank you very much for your testimony and for all of your work in this area, all of you. Okay, we're getting down to the end. I think our 8th panel of the day. We're going to combine people for those who are following the agenda. We're going to have Yara Calcano, who's with Mobilization for Justice, headquartered in my district in Lower Manhattan, and Kevin Wolf of the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. And I'm just going to ask if Laura McKenna or Peter White or Noel Eberts are here in the room, if you could just identify yourself to our staff. We may have one more panel featuring those folks. Okay, again, if you could state your name for the transcription and begin.
My name is Yara Calcano, staff attorney for Foreclosure Prevention Project at Mobilization for Justice.
For your testimony to state your name as well.
Thank you. To Chair Senator Brian Kavanaugh and the rest of the committee, thank you for holding this public hearing on deed theft, one of the most pressing issues facing senior homeowners and homeowners of color in New York State today. My name is Yara Calcano, and I'm a staff attorney in the Foreclosure Prevention Project at Mobilization for Justice, Inc., MFJ. MFJ's mission is to achieve justice for all. MFJ prioritizes the needs of people who are low income, disenfranchised, or have disabilities as they struggle to overcome the effects of social injustice and systemic racism. We provide the highest quality, free, direct civil legal assistance, conduct community education, and build partnerships, engage in policy advocacy, and bring impact litigation. We assist more than 14,000 New Yorkers each year, benefiting over 24,000. MFJ launched its foreclosure prevention project in 2008 in the aftermath of the economic recession and foreclosure crisis. A significant majority of our clients are persons of color, including seniors, veterans, persons with mental and physical disabilities, and working poor New Yorkers who live paycheck to paycheck. On homeownership and the racial wealth gap, preserving homeownership in communities of color is a vital component of racial and economic equality. According to 2019 Federal Reserve data, the median net worth of Black households is $24,100, which is 1/10 the wealth of white households at $188,200, while the median net worth of Latinx households lags similarly far behind at $36,100. This racial wealth gap is the lasting consequence of slavery, segregation, redlining, and institutionalized racism. In the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, which laid bare the same deep-rooted inequities with disproportionately high infection and mortality rates for people of color in New York City and across New York State, New Yorkers of color and seniors continue to face financial challenges, not the least of which include deed theft. The state currently faces among the highest unemployment rate in the nation at 4.9% as of August 2022, a rate surpassed by New York City's 6.8% of unemployment, which includes a whopping 9.5% and 7.1% rate of unemployment in the Bronx and Kings counties, respectively. I highlight the almost 10% unemployment rate in the Bronx because people of color make up over 90% of its population. Homeownership plays a vital role in mitigating this racial wealth gap. For families of color, a home is usually one's only wealth accumulating asset and opportunity for intergenerational wealth. Studies have shown that homeownership constitutes 92% of net worth for Black families and 67% for Latinx families, in contrast to white families for whom homeownership represents only 58% of net worth. With such disparities, deed theft and deed fraud scams are particularly harmful in communities of color. More vulnerable still are senior homeowners and homeowners with limited English proficiency, especially in rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods all over the city. On deed theft scams, in our practice representing homeowners, MFJ staff deal too often with cases involving deed scams. MFJ has testified on this very issue in the past, pointing out how deed scammers look beyond outright deed forgery and target vulnerable homeowners with evolving creative schemes in response to increased public attention to deed theft. For example, one of my Queens clients fell victim to a deed theft scam. Miss Luxon, a pseudonym, owns her property in fee simple after inheriting it from her parents, who purchased the home over 60 years ago. Last year, seemingly out of nowhere, an individual unknown to Miss Luxon and without any connection to her property conveyed it to a corporation for a profit. That corporation took out a $360,000 mortgage on the property and later conveyed it to a Delaware-based trust doing business in Minnesota. The individual who fraudulently conveyed Miss Luxon's property away was able to do so swiftly by claiming to be her sole heir, even though Miss Luxon has not passed any property interest whatsoever onto anyone and is in fact very much still alive. Miss Luxon is an African-American senior with little wealth other than that which her family built over 6 decades in the form of her home in St. Albans, Queens. That asset seemingly vanished because one bold scammer and out-of-state trust that invests in properties obtained through fraud. Although there is no question that title to Miss Luxon's property was wrongfully taken, she must undertake to bring a quiet title action to reclaim title and cancel the fraudulently obtained mortgage. MFJ is representing Miss Luxon in the suit, but litigating these cases is both time and resource intensive. Deed theft cases generally require heavy staffing and commitment to years of litigation. Ms. Luxon's case is just one example of how New York's vulnerable homeowners are wrongfully separated from their title to their homes. At MFJ, we see new deed theft and equity stripping schemes continue to emerge. As home values skyrocket in historically Black and brown neighborhoods, scammers reap massive profits by preying on the most vulnerable and distressed homeowners, stealing their property and with it, their main source of wealth. Without intervention from our elected officials and sufficient resources to combat such scams, MFJ believes that those intent on flipping homes for a profit will continue to adapt and invent new ways of uprooting vulnerable populations from the very communities they have built. The New York State Office of the Attorney General has made admirable efforts to address the systemic issues that yield a space for creative deed theft schemes that plague the state's most vulnerable homeowners. Indeed, the AG's office now runs the state homeowner protection program known as HOP, which provides funding to organizations like MFJ, helping homeowners facing foreclosures, predatory lending, abusive mortgage servicing, and scams targeting seniors and people of color. But HOP remains the only dedicated foreclosure prevention funding source, and there's little other support for vulnerable homeowners. With increased threats to homeownership since the start of the pandemic, MFJ urges the legislature to continue to dedicate funding to housing counseling and legal services organizations who can help homeowners fight back against these scams and maintain not only their homes but their equity. Deed theft cases are exceptionally complicated, time-intensive, and often appropriately referred to law enforcement agencies equipped with the resources to properly investigate a case. Equipping local nonprofit agency services providers like MFJ with the resources necessary to defend and prosecute these actions is an integral component to protecting New York homeowners. In addition to supporting increased funding legal services, MFJ recommends that the legislature pass the Consumer and Small Business Protection Act, CISPA. CISPA would amend New York State's Consumer Protection Law, General Business Law, Section 349, to bring it into parity with state and federal consumer protection standards across the country. It would do so by adding a privately enforceable ban against unfair and abusive practices. Deed theft schemes by targeting and extracting wealth from people of color are inherently unfair and abusive. Banning these practices and providing individuals the power to enforce the law is a necessary step towards racial justice. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide this written testimony, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at the email. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
Good afternoon. Gotta make sure that this mic can reach. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Wolf, and I'm the Senior Government Affairs Manager at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. The Center for New York City Neighborhoods is one of the largest nonprofit organizations that provides homeowner services in New York City. Our focus is to make sure that low to middle income communities are able to live in strong and thriving communities throughout the city. We have a diverse network of partners all over the city. Mobilizing for Justice is one of the partners that we work with, and you've heard from many of them at today's hearing about many of the issues that are facing homeowners. We work very closely with our government partners, both on the state level and on the city level, to provide funding, as well as private partners to provide funding, as well as training for our network of both housing counseling and legal service providers throughout New York City. In addition, one thing I should mention about the Center's homeowner services is that they are even more important when we're in times of economic stress and as we're coming out of the pandemic. Our services are counter-cyclical. So when we move into, if we move into a recessionary period, we find that homeowners need our services more than ever. Now, when we talk about deed theft, the connection, New York City in particular is sort of unique. There's a connection between deed theft, scams, and foreclosures. And in New York City, the rise in deed theft is fueled by a rapidly increasing home values. We've seen that particularly as we're coming out of the pandemic. New York City's home values have skyrocketed, and incomes have not risen commensurate to that. In addition, we have thousands of New York City homeowners that are struggling to avoid foreclosure. They're in need of home repair. We've heard some of the homeowners who came and testified to that. These are displacement pressures that are making these homeowners more vulnerable to deed theft. The negative effects of foreclosure are seen particularly in communities of color, where communities of colors are disproportionately harmed by predatory lending, that a lot of the predatory lending that caused the financial crisis back in 2008. In addition, I'd like to echo some of the statements that have been made already. If you look at the wealth of black families, about half of black family wealth was lost through the Great Recession. And in addition, if you look at the Latino community, we see 67% of wealth was lost. A lot of that was lost due to the housing crisis and the drop in home values and the loss of homes due to foreclosure. According to the New York City Department of Finance, there have been 3,300 complaints of deed theft in New York City. Almost half of them were in Brooklyn. And even though we see that the delinquency numbers have dropped from their pandemic highs, New York State has one of the highest levels of mortgage delinquency, mortgage distress and delinquency in the nation. In addition, a lot of the protections that were available during the pandemic have lapsed, both on the state and the federal level. New York State led the way in having a foreclosure moratorium, and that has lapsed. And since these protections have lapsed, we've seen an increase in foreclosure activity. Deed thieves, as well as mortgage rescue scammers, are able to thrive in these types of conditions. They're able to spread misinformation to the homeowners that they target because they know that they're in financial distress. They offer themselves out as people who are in a position to help and they say that they're on the homeowner side, whether or not they're an attorney, whether or not they are someone who can provide them with funding. And this is often misleading people, and also they often mislead people in believing that they are agents of government programs. And we see that when we see a lot of federal relief that's come out. Scammers are taking advantage of that and saying, oh, well, we are agents of these programs, apply through us and pay us a fee. These are all signs of scams. So a part of what we do at the center is we're part of the HOP network, which has been mentioned, the Homeowner Protection Program. It's about over 90 different organizations across the state. It's funded by New York State, and it's unique in the nation. It provides the infrastructure that we need in order to combat deed theft on the front lines. Both the legal services and helping clients when they come through the door and have an active case of deed theft, as well as the housing counseling. And then in addition to that, being sort of on the ground and providing outreach. And that's something that I want to touch on. A lot of what we have in our testimony has been echoed by a number of the other witnesses. So I do want to just draw your attention to a couple of key areas for the center, in addition to continuing to support the HOP program. And we know that the members of this committee have been champions of HOP, and we are very thankful for that. We also want to talk a little bit about how we can prophylactively fight against a deed theft. And there's been legislative recommendations. We also want to talk a little bit about the services that we provide. So the Center for New York City Neighborhoods partnered with the New York State Attorney General's office in creating a Protect Our Homes campaign. And we brought in a homeowner help desk, and this was sort of in the midst of the pandemic. So a lot of the activity in the beginning was virtual and then moved into in-person as we continued. But the idea really was to prophylactically educate homeowners and prevent incidents of deed theft before they happen. We find that it's much more expensive for the state and for the nonprofit community to combat deed theft after it happens. And there's a whole host of issues. And if we can get to the homeowners before they're victims, then we're able, and to educate them, then we're able to much more effectively prevent them from losing their home. So the Protect Our Homes campaign, we reached, over 100,000 New Yorkers and engaged about 34,000 either through a wellness check survey. We went throughout the community and surveyed homeowners to understand what their needs were. And then in addition to that, we had homeowners who were directly assisted by both legal services and housing counseling. The final thing that we were able to do is develop a homeowner manual to provide the resources that are available. One of the things that we've heard is that a lot of the homeowners aren't aware of all the resources, all the nonprofits that are out there. And so what we did at the center is develop a homeowner manual and distribute that to over 3,000 New Yorkers, and we want to continue those efforts. In addition to that, we worked with Senator Salazar had mentioned the cease and desist zones. After the legislature passed the cease and desist zone in Brooklyn, the Protect Our Homes campaign went to Brooklyn, partnered with the Department of State as well as HPD to reach out to homeowners and educate homeowners about cease and desist zones and how they can submit evidence to the Department of State and how they can sort of proactively combat folk who are knocking on doors and try to scam homeowners. The final thing that I wanted to mention, we talked a lot about generational wealth. Estate planning is one of the priorities for the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, and that is a way that we believe is very powerful as a tool for combating deed theft. The center developed, a black homeownership project. And the idea, New York City has seen an enormous drop in its black homeownership population. And so the idea is that we want to preserve and protect and to grow black homeownership. And one of the ways, one of the sort of the low-hanging fruits is really developing estate planning. And so the center has developed what's called the Gen to Gen program. The idea is that we're bringing in pro bono attorneys from across the city, many of them from large law firms, and giving them an opportunity to be educated by attorneys in our network that have expertise in estate planning, whether or not it's wills, trust, whether or not it's power of attorney, just coming up with an estate plan, because what we find so often in our neighborhoods, particularly in central Brooklyn, particularly in the Bronx, Queens, we find that a lot of our homeowners have lived in the homes for many years. Some of them have aged in place, and they don't have a estate plan. And so when the homeowner passes on, there's no plan for who inherits the home. And this is one of those areas where deed theft can sort of go rampant in New York City. And so Gen to Gen is really designed, and it just launched this year, it's really designed to combat that and to make sure that homeowners not only get the education, but also have the services so that they can provide, keep their home and pass on generational wealth. The only other things that we'd like to highlight as far as recommendations and priorities, we would like to echo quite a bit of what the Attorney General and a lot of the organizations here discussed. We do want to see increased regulation of notaries in order to better protect homeowners. We also want to see more transparency when it comes to deed transfers. That's one of the most difficult things when it comes to outreach, knowing where to go for the homeowners, knowing who's at risk. That's one of the issues that in the nonprofit community we'd like to see. And then, of course, cease and desist zones. We'd like to continue to see cease and desist zones. That's been an effective tool for engaging homeowners, engaging in the community. There are a lot of homeowners that want to continue to see that. So without further ado, thank you for this opportunity to testify. Thank you for holding this hearing and for all that you've done to champion homeowners in New York State.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Senator Myrie.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to you both. Good to see you in person, Mr. Wolf. And to Ms. Calcagno, if you can, for us, this is a theme we've heard from many of the providers and many of the people stepping into the gap to try to provide some legal representation for homeowners. Can you talk to us about the tough choices you and your partners have to make in resource allocation? Meaning, all of the stories we've heard today are gut-wrenching. I suspect many of the stories are the same in that the impact is gut-wrenching. But you only have a limited capacity, and we've heard from the victims that they're getting charged exorbitant fees from private attorneys, and or those attorneys are taking advantage of them. And so really, y'all are the front line, and by way of funding HOP, the government is assisting, but on the mechanics, you are the front line. Can you tell us about how hard it is to have to choose your clients and to say no to people with potentially devastating stories?
Thank you for your question, Senator. I can tell you I don't even have to think too far in my memory. Just before I got here today, I spoke to a client that we had to decline to give services to. Because it was not the type of case we have the capacity to take on. But her case was very interesting. She was a homeowner who had some shares left in her property that she inherited from her family. She shared the shares with one remaining relative, and they were just getting constantly harassed by some LLC corporation that was constantly lowballing them for the shares. This isn't even the worst of it because it's not outright theft, but it is taking advantage of people who can't afford a lawyer or an appraiser or all sorts of other type of professionals that are very expensive to help them get a good deal on their home or to even protect them from that type of predatory practice of approaching homeowners to try to see how cheaply they can obtain very, very valuable properties in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan as well. That happened, 30 minutes ago. And I can tell you that the majority of the clients on my personal docket have some sort of deed theft issue underlying the main issue that I, as their lawyer, am helping them with, because I don't always help all my clients with that particular issue, but it underlies many of the clients that we do serve in the foreclosure prevention project at MFJ. And it is, you're right, Senator, it is an issue of resource allocation. In my project in particular, we only have about 4 or 5 attorneys that are dedicated to foreclosure prevention. And the project has so much more potential, so much expertise and drive and passion for these types of cases, but not enough lawyers, not enough resources to serve the population that needs that type of assistance.
Just I think a quick question for Mr. Wolf. The HOP program, I mean, it's been said several times today, we need to make sure we continue to fund it. Are there other ways we ought to strengthen the process by which people become aware of the resources? I think it was mentioned earlier in testimony that people who are facing mortgage foreclosure routinely get notice of HOP. I think that's actually a required part of the current law, but that requirement doesn't apply to circumstances where somebody's behind on their taxes. I guess, specific question, does it seem like a good idea to expand that required notice to property tax delinquencies? And secondly, is there any other aspects of the program you think we should strengthen?
Yes, Senator. So yes, I would definitely recommend expanding required notice to property taxes. We do work with the Department of Finance, and we do outreach work in partnership with them. But the tax lien sale in particular, that's one of the ways, one of the major vectors where the scammers are able to find these homeowners, because they know, oh, you're behind on your taxes, I can target you. Extending outreach to those homeowners, I think, is important. I think as far as other recommendations, I think, we have our Protect Our Homes campaign in partnership with the Attorney General. I think, strengthening that and expanding that would be critical. Right now, it's only operating in New York City, and specifically only in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. And so we're not able to get to all 5 boroughs just because of resources. But we found that it was very important to work with the Attorney General's office, because that was a source of validation. And a lot of the homeowners, they may not be familiar with the nonprofit community, but they know the Attorney General, and they know that if I can go to law enforcement and report what's going on, then maybe I can get a solution. And so that's a good way for us to that's a good hook for us when it comes to outreach. So kind of expanding that partnership, working in tandem with the AG's office and expanding that across the city and the state, I think will be very helpful in combating deed theft.
Great, thank you. And on the notice specifically, I mean, you mentioned, a lien sale. I mean, that's obviously a pretty late in the process. Are there things we should be pushing our governments, our taxing authority here in New York, of course, the Department of Finance, to do proactively to notify people? I mean, I think the current requirement in the mortgage context is statutory. I just wonder, I think we expect to legislate, but I mean, are there things that we should be pushing the Department of Finance to do sort of proactively, just as a policy matter, to make sure people are aware of these resources?
Senator, so we don't have any specific recommendations there. I can say that I think that would be helpful. The general idea, I think, would be helpful. And as I think about when you look at the tax liens, a lot of the tax liens aren't simply a homeowner who's behind on their taxes. It's homeowners who have a repair. They've had a repair that was neglected, and they have a tenant. Let's say they're a small home, 2 to 4 families. They have got a repair that was neglected, and the city comes in and does an emergency repair, and then they put a lien on the property. We see a lot of our homeowners come in because of that, and that information is public. And so scammers, when it comes to particularly repair scams, oftentimes they will target those homeowners because they know, you're not able to do repairs on the home. Let me offer you something and pretend that I'm going to help you with this repair, and they can further swindle that homeowner. So getting to the homeowners before they get on the lien sale, I think, is excellent, and requiring some type of, once there is some type of enforcement action, or the city has said you're delinquent, making sure that those homeowners are aware of the resources that are available, I think, would dramatically reduce, incidents of deed theft.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, so I'll just thank this panel, and before adjourning the hearing, let me just consult with staff about a couple of witnesses that I'm not sure are here yet, but we'll get their status. But so if people could just sit tight for a second, but thank you both for.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we did have a couple of other witnesses that we're expecting, but we haven't seen yet. So I think we are going to adjourn this hearing very shortly. I just want to, I'll just end by thanking everyone who has participated, everyone who's testified, my colleagues who have participated in the discussions, and the very robust showing of people who are here in person today, and also the many people who will be watching online. And this is obviously a conversation that is to be continued. I don't have a specific date to announce, but I do expect we will be having further hearings on this matter, and of course we'll be working with our colleagues and our staff to develop some of the legislative proposals that have been discussed here today. So I'm just going to offer any of my colleagues any opportunity for some final words before we go. And hearing none. Okay, again, so we will adjourn this hearing. And again, thanks everybody for all of your participation.